Chapter 571. If you don't enter the Linglong Mountain, you'll never know how big this mountain is and how spiritual it is. Outside the mountain, what Su Yun saw was like looking at flowers in the fog. He could only get a general idea, and only after entering the Linglong Mountain did Su Yun realize that what he had seen was only the tip of the iceberg. Under Qing Wenlu's lead, Su Yun followed the winding path for a full half a day. The so-called forward movement was actually just flying close to the ground. 3 inches above the ground was fine, and his speed was not slow. In half a day's time, with Su Yun's speed, he did not know how far he had to travel, but he had not reached the Lotus Star Sword sect yet. There are more than 50 sects in the entire Linglong Mountain, and there are countless rogue cultivators. Most of the people gathered here are spirit cultivator from the Wanhua realm, and most of them are from the outside world, so this place is a mix of fish and dragons. Master, I have already used our sect's order badge to send a message to the sect leader, and the sect leader has already issued an order for everyone in our sect to help you find your father and mother. Master, you can temporarily return to the Lotus Star Sword sect with Wenlu. On the way, Qing Wenlu said respectfully to Su Yun. Yes. Su Yun nodded and agreed with Qing Wenlu's method. Compared to the Lotus Star Sword sect, his personal strength was insignificant. Now that there was an entire sect searching for him, what was there for him to worry about? In less than 2 hours, the two of them arrived in front of Mountain Peak. Qing Wenlu, who was leading the way, slowed down. My lord, we have arrived, Qing Wenlu said. Hearing that, Su Yun looked forward, only to see that in the distance there were about a few hundred steps of stairs, and at the end of the stairs, there were some huge buildings painted with purple lines, pavilions, roofs, palaces, and courtyards, all at the end of the stairs, and at the very front was a huge door plate with 3 huge words on it. Lotus Star Sword. At this moment, there was a large group of people standing in front of stairs. There were about 40 to 50 of them, and the leader was an old man with wrinkled skin and white hair. When the old man saw Qing Wenlu and the others, he immediately walked forward. Qing Wenlu and the others hurriedly knelt down on one knee and bowed respectfully. Greetings, sect leader. Greetings, sect leader. The crowd shouted in unison. Get up, everyone, the old man said with a smile. Thank you, sect leader. Qing Wenlu got up. The old man's gaze landed on Su Yun, and after sizing him up, he nodded and smiled. Is this the master with the God Lord Leaf? Reporting to the sect leader, it is this person, Qing Wenlu said. Su Yun stepped forward and cupped his fists. I am Su Yun, greetings, sect leader. Master Su Yun, don't be so polite. The Lotus Star sect leader chuckled and said, with the divine leaf in your hand, you are an esteemed guest of my Lotus Star Sword sect. Please come in quickly. I have already set up a banquet to entertain you, master. With that, a group of higher-ups of the Lotus Star Sword sect warmly welcomed Su Yun in. With a banquet to eat, Su Yun would naturally not be courteous. The banquet in the ultimate martial world was not only for the guests to enjoy the delicacies, but also to use some mystical food to increase the cultivation of the guests. For example, the banquet he ate in the World Tree last time, Su Yun had calculated that it would increase the cultivation of a normal person for 3 years. Although the Lotus Star Sword sect was not comparable to the World Tree, it was not bad either. Right now, there was no need for Su Yun to search for it himself. Eating a banquet here was naturally the best thing to do. As expected, Su Yun was brought to a spacious and clean hall with no water but lotus flowers. The hall was filled with fine wine and delicacies, and there were even people dancing with swords to liven things up. After Su Yun ate for an hour, he felt that his cultivation had started to increase again, and the benefits he obtained made him extremely excited. However, this benefit was only secondary. With the joint efforts of the entire Lotus Star Sword sect, very quickly, news regarding Su Shintian and Shun Shueshue spread over. Su Yun almost dropped the wine cup in his hand. He anxiously stood up and asked the person who came to report, What did you say? There's news of Su Shintian and Shun Shueshue? That's right, I have indeed found out about them, but I just don't know which Su Shintian and Shun Shueshue you're looking for, Master Su Yun. The yellow-skinned woman who was standing in the middle of the hall with a long sword on her back cupped her fists and said, "Which one?" Su Yun was slightly startled. "What? Are there a few more?" "Currently, there are 3 men called Su Shintian and 16 women called Shun Shueshue in the Linglong Mountain," the woman said. Su Yun was immediately speechless, but he quickly asked, "Then do you know if Su Shintian and Shun Shueshue are together?" "I'm sorry, Master Su Yun. These people are scattered in all directions and are not together." "What?" Su Yun was shocked once again. "These are only the results of my initial investigation. The Linglong Mountain is extremely huge, and it is difficult to cover it quickly with just manpower. Furthermore, there are some places that we are unable to obtain reliable information, such as the interior of the sect. Therefore, I hope that Master will not take offense." The woman cupped her fist to express her apology. Seeing that, Su Yun immediately said, "Everyone has already done your best." Su Yun is naturally grateful. "How can I blame you? I should thank you." I don't dare," the woman hurriedly said. Very quickly, the lady took her leave, but Su Yun did not have the mood to continue eating. He stood up and cupped his fist towards the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect. "Sect leader, I feel unwell. I'm afraid I can't continue drinking with everyone. Please allow me to retreat and rest." "Oh, is that so?" The sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect looked at Su Yun, then nodded and smiled, rushing from the realm tree to the Linglong Mountain. "The journey is long. Master Su Yun has been rushing all the way. He is tired from the journey, and indeed needs to rest. It is my negligence. Come, arrange a good room for Master to rest." "Yes, sect leader," someone immediately replied, and then quickly walked in front of Su Yun and led him out of the table. The Lotus Star Sword sect was not a huge sword sect, but there were tens of thousands of disciples within, and the sect was famous for the sword. It was said that the sword sect had a peerless divine sword called the Lotus Star Sword, which was left behind by the founder of the sect and could be said to be a divine object. Only by training the Lotus Star Sword art to the peak would one be able to control this sword. So far, among the masters of the Lotus Star Sword sect, there were only 2 people who could control this sword. The first was the founder of the sect, and the second was the 3rd-generation sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect. It was said that after the creation of the sect, when the 3rd-generation sect leader was in charge of the Lotus Star Sword sect, the development of the sword sect was extremely fast, and it enjoyed a great reputation in the Wanhua realm. When the 3rd-generation sect leader obtained the Lotus Star Sword, his strength increased explosively. He relied on the Lotus Star Sword to defeat more than half of the experts in the Wanhua realm in one fell swoop, and his reputation was completely spread out. Although 1,000,000 sects was not a rare thing, and the profound sky sect of the Sky Martial continent was similar to it, there was one thing that needed to be known: the sects that gathered over 1,000,000 people existed in the ultimate martial world, and the strength of the disciples inside were all extremely high, and were definitely not something that the profound sky sect could compare to. Back then, in order to develop the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect did things swiftly and decisively, disregarding the consequences. In order to develop the sect and obtain resources, he usually used the method of forcefully seizing it, thus provoking many strong enemies. Finally, after 300 years of prosperity in the Lotus Star Sword sect, the sect leader who had mastered the Lotus Star Sword art was ambushed. His body was destroyed, and his soul was scattered. The Lotus Star Sword sect suffered a destructive attack from all sorts of enemies. This attack against the Lotus Star Sword sect happened in the ultimate martial world and the ultimate martial sacred plane, and was extremely famous in history. It was said that millions of spirit cultivator had died in this battle, and the battle situation was so tragic that it made one tremble. The reason why the Lotus Star Sword sect was able to develop to such a grand scale was closely related to the Lotus Star Sword and its sword techniques. In order to seize these 2 divine objects, more and more powerful spirit cultivator as participated. The Lotus Star Sword sect suffered a crushing defeat. In order to preserve the last bit of incense, the Lotus Star Sword sect hid in the Linglong Mountain of the Wanhua realm and attached itself to the Wanhua realm lord, which was why it was not destroyed. However, The Lotus Star Sword was damaged, and the Lotus Star Sword art seemed to only have an incomplete copy left. Hearing this, Su-yin also sighed. Behind the scene of decline, there was also a period of prosperity. After the prosperity, there was only the waiting of decline, and there was no eternal victory. Returning to the room arranged by the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect, Su-yin closed the door, took out the heavenly seeking treasure bell, and activated it, searching for the whereabouts of his parents. The Linglong Mountain was so big, and there were many people occupying it. There were definitely many people with the same name, but he wanted to know if his parents were still in the Linglong Mountain. When the profound strength was injected into the treasure bell, it immediately started to shake gently, and a strange sound came out from the inside of the bell, floating into Su-yun's ears and into his heart. Not long after, a message from the heavenly seeking treasure bell appeared in Su-yun's mind. Linglong Mountain. Su-yun muttered. As expected, he is still in the Linglong Mountain. However, why had his parents been here for so many months? Could it be that his little sister, whom he had never met before, was also in the Linglong Mountain? Su-yun was suspicious. Through the inquiry of the heavenly seeking treasure bell, Su-yun was a lot more at ease. What he needed to do now was to wait. With so many people in the Lotus Star Sword sect, he believed that in less than half a month, he would be able to find his parents' whereabouts. Su-yun sat cross-legged in the house, preparing to train his profound strength and nurture his spirit core. However, after a few days, there was no longer any news from the Lotus Star Sword sect. Su-yun frowned. He felt that something was amiss. During this period of time, even if he did not gain anything, at least someone would come to report and inform him. But these few days, it had been too quiet. Su-yun exhaled, stood up, and prepared to walk out to find the sect leader to ask. However, just as he was about to leave, he heard a series of hurried knocks on the door. Chapter 572. Su-yun walked over and opened the door, only to see a disciple of the Lotus Star Sword sect standing outside, cupping his fists, and anxiously said to Su-yun, "Master Su-yun, please move to the Lotus Star back garden." "What's wrong?" Su-yun asked in confusion. "What happened?" "This." The disciple hesitated for a moment, his face revealing that expression, but he still said honestly, "Someone has come to challenge us, and the experts of the Sword Sect are all fighting against the enemy. Protector Qing is afraid that the battle will affect this place, so he asked this disciple to bring you to the backyard to rest." "So, it's like that," Su-yun thought for a while, then asked, "Then someone came to challenge me. What about my matter? Is it about finding Su Shuntian and Shun Shue? Naturally, we have to put it aside," the disciple said helplessly. Now that even the sect leader has gone to the front to fight against the enemy, who would still have the mood to look for these two people? The person who has come is very powerful, and his goal is precisely our sect's most precious treasure, the Lotus Star Sword and the Lotus Star Sword art. If we do not do our best to fight against the enemy, I'm afraid our Lotus Star Sword sect will suffer a great disaster. The disciple said helplessly. Seeing that Su-yun was indifferent, he anxiously cupped his fists and shouted, "Master Su, please quickly follow disciple to the backyard. After I settle you down, disciple will still have to go to the front to fight against the enemy. I'm not in a hurry to go to the backyard, so you don't have to worry about my safety." Su-yun shook his head and said, "But I am very curious. This is the Linglong Mountain, and even more so the Wanhua realm. Who would dare to cause trouble here? Aren't you afraid of offending the supreme expertess of the Linglong Mountain? Aren't you afraid of offending the Realm Lord?" "Master, you don't know, but the person who challenged our Lotus Star Sword sect is actually a sect from the Linglong Mountain." The man sighed helplessly. "Otherwise, with my Lotus Star Sword sect standing on the Linglong Mountain for close to 1,000 years, how could we not have any external help? Right now, we can only fight alone, because our external help is also the external help of the challenger. They're trying to rob us by challenging us, and once we lose, it will be difficult to protect the treasure, which is in line with the rules of the Linglong Mountain. Not to mention the supreme expert. Even the Realm Lord cannot control us. We have no other choice but to accept the challenge." Hearing that, Su-yun frowned. Is the opponent difficult to deal with? This time, the opponent is an expert who hasn't returned for many years. His sword skills are outstanding. Currently, Protector Qing has gone up to fight against him. If he is defeated by him, only the Sect Master can accept the challenge. Once the Sect Master is defeated, according to the request made by the opponent before the challenge, we must hand over the 2 supreme treasures of our sect and disband on the spot. Hearing that, Su Yun was silent. In that case, the Lotus Star Sword sect would probably not be able to find his parents anymore. If that was the case, then that would not do. The Lotus Star Sword sect had a large number of people, and after searching for so many days, they still had no results. If they were to rely on themselves, it would be difficult to find traces of them without a few months of effort. Thinking about that, Su Yun said, "I'm not going to the backyard anymore. Quickly bring me to the front sect. I want to see the situation. Master this. You are an esteemed guest of our Lotus Star Sword sect. If anything were to happen to you, our Lotus Star Sword sect would not be able to explain to the Realm Lord." The disciple was in a difficult position. "Don't say any more. Quickly bring me there." Su Yun bellowed. His voice did not allow for any doubt. The disciple opened his mouth, but did not know how to refute. Seeing the seriousness in Su Yun's eyes, he did not seem to be joking at all, so he could only bite the bullet and lead Su Yun to the front. The front sect was extremely close to where Su Yun was. After flying for less than the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they were already close to the front sect. No wonder Qing Wenlu wanted this disciple to lead him to the backyard. This place was indeed too close to the battle site of the previous sect. At this level of battle, it was as if the existence of the Spirit Master had already been eliminated, and all of them were experts of the Sky Spirit Master. Once such a person went berserk, a profound technique would be able to destroy a mountain, slash apart a mountain, and with a single move, it would shake the mountains and rivers. Its power was extraordinary. As they neared the location of the battle, they could hear a large number of explosions. A sharp sword chi rushed into the clouds, slicing the thick black clouds in the sky into 2. Su Yun had seen this place before. The buildings, arrays, and scenery here were all destroyed, and the air was filled with a complicated, profound chi that could not be dispersed. At this moment, he could still see many people from the Lotus Star Sword sect rushing towards the front. Some of them were in a hurry to come, and directly flew up and rushed over. After passing through a dilapidated house, they arrived at the front sect. At this moment, the front sect was already filled with a sea of people. Everyone was gathered in one place and looking at the sky. Su Yun was brought to the front of the crowd by the disciple. At this time, there was a huge array in front of the crowd, and at the moment, there were 2 light swords inserted into the array. One was slender, the other was thick, and on top of the light sword, there were 2 figures intertwined with each other. The 2 of them each held a long sword that was no different from the light sword in the array, crazily slashing at each other with boundless power. The sword chi crisscrossed, flying far away. The people below did not dare to get too close, and kept retreating. Some of the sword chi fell down. The stronger ones could still resist. The weaker ones could only dodge, and there were even many people who were injured by the unexpected sword chi. Su Yun stared at the 2 people above. One of them was Qing Wenlu, who he had seen outside the Linglong Mountain, while the other was the first time he had seen him. This person was dressed in a white robe. He was not considered good-looking, but his figure was well-proportioned. His hair was extremely short, and his skin was unexpectedly white. However, it was not a fair white, but a pale white. His long and narrow eyes were full of charm, and they were abnormally sharp, like the eyes of an eagle. "Which sect is this person from?" Su Yun asked the disciple who brought him here. The disciple looked worriedly at the intense battle in the sky, and then said respectfully to Su Yun, reporting to Master Su, "That is someone from the Black Hawk cult. The person who is fighting with my protector Qing is the sword envoy Donghe, who has left the Black Hawk cult for 200 years and has not returned. It is said that this person's sword techniques are outstanding, and have already reached the acme of perfection. Fast as lightning, slow as 1,000 caddies. The sword can be fast or slow. The sword chi can be used to attack, and the sword can also be used to defeat the enemy. It is not something an ordinary person can fight against. Today, the Black Hawk cult sent this person to steal our sect treasure. I'm afraid they have a lot of trust in this person's strength. The man was very worried. Is that so? Su Yun stared at the pale-faced man. His gaze then landed on the array seal on the ground and asked, "What is this array?" "This is the contract array during the challenge." The disciple said worriedly, "This is the rule of the Linglong Mountain, and is actually a rule set by the Realm Lord. The people of the Wanhua realm advocate peace, and most of the people of the Linglong Mountain come from the outside world. So the Wanhua Realm Lord and the majority of the Supreme Expertess of the Linglong Mountain set up the rules of the Linglong Mountain, and all battles can only be carried out according to the method of dueling challenges. As long as someone challenges, they have to use this formation as the foundation to sign the contract. During the signing process, the seal will record the conditions that the two people propose after winning, and the two of them will sign the contract with their lives. After the duel, the seal will immediately force the loser to meet the conditions of the winner, and if the loser does not agree, then the array seal will destroy the life link between the two people that landed on the seal, completely killing that person and destroying his soul. He pointed to the two light swords on the array seal and said, "Master, you see that, right? Those two light swords are the imprints left behind by Protector Qing and Yin Donghe. As long as the victor is decided, the seal will force the loser to meet the conditions of the winner. If the loser does not comply, the light sword above will be destroyed, and that person will die without a doubt. The previous challengers, they have all rejected the conditions of the victorious side and have been destroyed by the array seal," the disciple said sadly. "If that's the case, why didn't you reject the challenge?" Su Yun frowned. "I can't refuse." The disciple shook his head. "Once you refuse to accept the challenge, it will be considered a defeat. You must meet the conditions of the victorious side. Otherwise, it will be considered a violation of the rules of the Linglong Mountain, and will be viewed as the public enemy of the Linglong Mountain. This rule is too inhumane." "Sai, what kind of humanity is there to speak of?" Although the Wanhua realm was mainly peaceful and harmonious, worshipping nature, truth, kindness, and beauty, no matter how hard the people here worked. How could they do it? With so many people from the outside world entering, this place was already filled with fish and dragons. How could it be peaceful? This place has also gradually become a world where the strong preys on the weak and the strong are the kings. It is precisely because of this that the Wanhua realm has started to restrict people from other realms from entering. Hearing that, Su Yin fell into deep thought. So at this moment, a series of sharp sword whistling sounds erupted in the air. When everyone heard this, they all looked up, only to see a series of sword images streaking across the sky, covering the sky and covering the sun. It was vast and terrifying, and within the sword images was Qing Wenlu. At this moment, his entire body was covered in sword scars. Blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth, and two bloody holes appeared on his chest, from which fresh blood gushed out like a spring. He gritted his teeth, tightly gripping the thick broadsword in his hand, and crazily waved it in all directions. However, he was unable to touch his opponent at all, and was completely suppressed. Seeing Yin Donghe calmly surrounding Qing Wenlu and attacking him, Su Yin knew that the outcome of the battle had already been decided. Dong! A muffled sound rang out again. Unknowingly, Qing Wenlu's neck had been struck by a kick, and his entire body fell from the sky, fiercely smashing into a tall pavilion below. The entire pavilion instantly collapsed. Protector Qing, seeing that, the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect were extremely anxious. They shouted in unison, and all of them rushed towards that direction as if they had gone mad. "Quick, go and see how Protector Qing is doing." Another middle-aged woman shouted at the people beside her. A few experts at the side moved like the wind towards the collapsed pavilion. And beside the middle-aged woman was the old sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect. The current him had a calm expression, but deep within this calmness, there was a trace of unconcealable sadness. Qing Wenlu had lost. Su Yun sighed in his heart. It didn't matter how injured Qing Wenlu was now. According to his personality, He would never agree to the other party's request. Then, there was only one result waiting for him. That was to go against the will of the erased seal and be killed by it. Chapter 573. A few experts of the Lotus Star Sword sect used the profound chi to remove the broken rocks and rotten wood from the pavilion. Qing Wenlu's broken body appeared in front of everyone's eyes, and at this moment, he was quietly lying on the ground, his entire body covered in blood. He opened his lifeless eyes and looked at the sky. A disciple of the Lotus Star Sword sect wanted to help him up, but was stopped by the person beside him. The disciple looked at him in surprise, only to see him shaking his head helplessly, indicating that he should not go forward. The disciple wanted to say something but hesitated, but very quickly, he understood the helplessness in the expert's eyes. In an instant, tears flashed in his eyes, and he bit his lips, looking like he was enduring the pain. That's right, it was useless to save him. According to the rules of the mountain, Qing Wenlu had lost, and losing meant death. Before the battle, they had already signed the erased seal. No one could change it, and no one could save it, not even the sect leader. The surrounding people of the Lotus Star Sword sect all surrounded them. Some of the people who were still thinking of saving him had no choice but to stop at this moment. Waves of sobbing sounds came from the crowd. Sorrowful and mournful wails floated in the air. Protector Qing, the white-haired sect leader, slowly walked over, his deep eyes filled with pain as he looked at the person lying in a pool of blood. Sect leader, Qing Wenlu replied in an extremely weak voice. He moved his eyes and looked at the old man who was walking over. He moved his lips that were covered in blood and said weakly, Sect leader, I'm sorry. Wenlu is incompetent and has failed to live up to your expectations of me. I'm sorry. Don't say any more. The old sect leader took a few steps forward, his hands trembling as he grabbed onto Qing Wenlu's slowly raised hand, and called out in a sorrowful voice. No one said a word. They only looked at Qing Wenlu quietly. Some people quietly wiped away the tears from the corners of their eyes. The female cultivator's eyes were all red, and they did not dare to look at this scene. Suyin looked at the people around him, his heart filled with emotions. The people of the Wanhua realm seemed to be more humane than the people of the ultimate martial world, and the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect were even more so, who said that cultivators were heartless. I'm afraid I can only rely on you to resolve today's calamity. Qing Wenlu's voice slowly became weaker, and the hand that was raised also slowly fell down. Without the slightest bit of strength left, the old sect master grabbed his hand tightly. After a long time, he stood up and did not make a sound. The sorrow on his face slowly disappeared and was replaced by endless solemnity and dignity. You want to save them? At this time, Yin Dongha flew down from the sky and landed in front of the hundreds of Black Hawk cult members. He held onto the thin sword with one hand and supported himself on the ground, while sweeping his gaze across Qing Wenlu, who was lying on the ground, and said indifferently, As long as you satisfy my request and hand over the Lotus Star Sword art and the Lotus Star Sword, then Qing Wenlu will be able to live. Otherwise, according to the mountain rules, once the erase seal is activated, he will definitely die. Bullshit. Without waiting for the old sect leader to speak, an explosive shout came out from the crowd of Lotus Star Sword sect, and a disciple shouted at Yin Dongha, You'd better not insult Protector Qing. Protector Qing is an upright person, and has given his all to the sect. How could he hand over the sect's treasure to you guys for his life? Dream on. That's right. Don't underestimate our Lotus Star Sword sect. We haven't lost yet. I don't believe that with so many people in our Lotus Star Sword sect, you can kill them all. If you have the ability, then come at me. The disciples were all excited. All of them had excited expressions on their faces as they shouted loudly. Seeing that, Yin Dongha's face was immediately filled with anger. He swept a glance at the group of people, snorted, and did not waste any time. He directly took a few steps forward and shouted at Qing Wenlu, who was lying on the ground. Qing Wenlu, now that you have lost, according to the rules of the contract, you have two choices. One, obey the contract that you made previously, and hand over your Lotus Star Sword sect's most precious Lotus Star Sword and its sword techniques to me. 2, go. I quickly choose. His voice was very loud, and when he said those words, the excited crowd immediately quieted down. Pairs of eyes turned to look at Qing Wenlu, who was lying in front of the old sect leader. At this moment, Qing Wenlu opened his eyes once again. At this moment, he actually had an unknown source of strength, and he actually recovered a bit. He directly grabbed onto his incomparably heavy greatsword, supported his damaged body, and stood up. Everyone held their breaths as they looked at Qing Wenlu. At this moment, it was as if everyone saw a giant that could support the heavens and earth. Only Su Yun knew that this was just the final radiance of a setting sun. Qing Wenlu opened his eyes wide, staring at Yin Donghe. Like an evil spirit, his aura was incomparably strong, and then shouted with full of energy, "Stop your wishful thinking. The people of my Lotus Star Sword sect have never been afraid of death. Today, you have to slaughter my entire Lotus Star Sword sect. Otherwise, you will definitely not be able to obtain my sect's treasure." Qing Wenlu let out a roar that shook the heavens. Almost at the same time his words fell, the array seal in the middle of the two sides released a dazzling blue light. Following that, the heavy light sword that represented Qing Wenlu on the array seal instantly shattered and disappeared without a trace. At the same time, Qing Wenlu's body also started to split into pieces. In the end, his corpse turned into sand and instantly disappeared into the world. Protector Qing. All the people from the Lotus Star Sword sect knelt down in unison and cried bitterly. The new disciples who had just entered the sect were wailing even louder. The old people in the Lotus Star Sword sect all knew that this kind Protector Qing took special care of the new disciples who had just entered the sect. His influence in the sect was not something that the left Protector Buming could compare to. The old sect leader stood there quietly, not saying a word. However, his dark and sunken eyes were already filled with a thick killing intent. This time, even the famous right Protector Qing Wenlu is dead. Who else do you have that can contend against our Lord Sword Envoy? Sai, why make unnecessary sacrifices? Why don't you be more straightforward and hand over the item? Wouldn't that be peaceful for everyone? At this time, an enchanting woman walked out from the Black Hawk cult. She was wearing a Black Blade Master outfit. Her chest was wide open, revealing her white cleavage, her charming eyes, red lips, and a mole at the corner of her mouth. The order badge on her waist was of a much higher grade than the disciples behind her. Sword Envoy Yin Donghe crossed his arms across his chest and stood beside her. Looking at the woman's aura, her strength was probably not ordinary either. Is this all the strength the Lotus Star Sword sect has? Yin Donghe shook his head. It's a pity that this is the Wanhua realm. It's the Linglong Mountain. If not, this kind of third-rate sect could be easily destroyed. According to these rules, it's a waste of time. The weak should be eliminated and not live on. What did you say? Damn it, too arrogant. The people of the Lotus Star Sword sect were enraged once again, and all of them started to curse. However, the people from the Black Hawk cult were not to be outdone, and all sorts of ridicule were thrown out. TSK, TSK, TSK. The people of the Lotus Star Sword sect are only SOSO. Do you only know how to fight? If you have the ability, then fight with our Lord Sword Envoy first. Hey, that guy over there, didn't you scold him quite fiercely? Didn't you cry pretty fiercely when your protector died? I think you might as well come out and avenge your protector. How would he dare? With that little bit of ability of his, he only used his own blood to wash the sword of our Lord Sword Envoy. Ha! There was no end to the roaring laughter. The faces of the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect were all flushed red. Their anger exploded. They wanted to immediately rush forward and fight with these people. But they all understood that if they really made a move, it would be a violation of the mountain rules, and the Lotus Star Sword sect would be completely finished. The Black Hawk cult and the Lotus Star Sword sect coexist in the Linglong Mountain. They should support each other and help each other develop, but the Black Hawk cult hopes to strengthen themselves by swallowing other sects. This is definitely not desirable. Just as everyone was laughing, a voice suddenly broke the laughter. Everyone hurriedly looked towards the source of the voice, only to see the white-haired old sect leader walking over. staring at swordsman Yin Dongha, and said in a deep voice. When the old sect leader spoke, almost everyone's heart skipped a beat at the same time. Was the sect leader going to make his move? Yin Dongha also put away his playful expression and stared at the old man seriously and seriously. His expression was extremely solemn. From his point of view, in the entire Lotus Star Sword sect, only this person was the one he was most wary of. Is the sect leader finally going to make his move? Let's see how this Yin Dongha can contend against him this time. The sect leader was already an expert that resounded throughout the entire Linglong Mountain 50 years ago. In front of the sect leader, what is this sword envoy? Perhaps we should have let the sect leader take action long ago. If that was the case, Protector Qing wouldn't have died. Who would have thought that this Yin Dongha's cultivation would be so terrifying? The people of the Lotus Star Sword sect discussed in low voices, their eyes all focused on the white-haired old man. This was the last hope of the Lotus Star Sword sect. If even the sect leader was defeated, then the Lotus Star Sword sect was destined to be annexed. Wait a moment. At this moment, another voice suddenly came from the crowd. Everyone was woken up by the sudden voice and turned their gazes over. A man wearing a large cloak and carrying a sword sheath walked out of the crowd and walked over. Without the Lotus Star Sword sect's badge, this person is not from the Lotus Star Sword sect. The seductive lady dressed in black Blade Master clothes sized Su Yun up and said to the sword envoy beside her. The sword envoy nodded, his gaze focused on Su Yun. Master Su Yun, why are you here? Didn't I already arrange for you to stay in the backyard? The sect leader looked at Su Yun, who was walking over in surprise, and said. He had been paying attention to Qing Wenlu the entire time, but he did not see Su Yun in the crowd. If I don't come, I'm afraid I won't even be able to stay in the backyard. Su Yun shook his head and said. Su Yun did not know if the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect treated him with sincerity or not, but during this period of time in the Lotus Star Sword sect, no one had treated him unfairly. If he could help, then help. If he could resolve this calamity, then that would naturally be for the best. Chapter 574. Seeing this person walk out, the sword envoy Yin Dongha immediately asked, Who are you? Su Yun immediately took out the divine leaf from the ring and showed it to everyone. Do you recognize this item? This is... The woman was startled, and her eyes flashed with deep surprise. What is this? The sword envoy Yin Dongha asked. Although he had stayed in the Wanhua realm for a period of time, he was not very familiar with the Realm Tree Realm Master. So when he saw the golden leaf, he did not know what it was. This is a divine leaf from the World Tree. It said that it's a sacred item of the Realm Lord, and there are only a few of them. Usually, the Realm Lord wouldn't give them to others. Since this person has a divine leaf in his hands, it means that his relationship with the Realm Lord is very good. If you offend him, it means that you are offending the Realm Lord. The woman whispered to the sword envoy, This person is probably an incredible character. We have to be careful. Is that so? Are you sure that's a real god leaf? And not forged? Yin Dongha frowned. I won't. The black-dressed woman shook her head. I was fortunate enough to have seen this divine leaf before. This aura can't be wrong. Furthermore, forging a divine leaf is a capital offense. Once it is exposed, the outcome will be extremely miserable. Every blade of grass and tree in the Wanhua realm is the eyes and ears of the Realm Master. Who would have the guts to do such a thing? Yin Dongha thought for a moment, then said indifferently, It's fine if this person has the divine leaf, but what does it have to do with me? Today, we did not do anything that violated the rules of the mountain. Even if he is the Realm Lord, he would not be able to save the Lotus Star Sword sect. Lord Sword Envoy, don't be rash. Let's see what this person plans to do. The black-dressed woman laughed. In any case, the Lotus Star Sword sect will definitely perish today. There is no need for us to be in such a hurry. He just has a piece of divine leaf and is not a realm master, so we might not have to put them in our eyes. Well said. The sword envoy nodded, then said to Su Yun indifferently, I don't care who you are. If you want to stop us and save the Lotus Star Sword sect, then forgive me, Yin Dongha, for being rude. Realm Lord God Yi is here. You dare to be impudent? Su Yun said solemnly. We didn't break any of the mountain rules. What can you do to us? What? Could it be that you want to use your authority to make a move against us? Yin Dongha snorted. Abusing my authority? Of course I won't do that. Besides, I don't have a position. Su Yun said, however, I did not come here with the Realm Lord God's leave to sightsee. I came here on the orders of the Realm Lord to ask the Lotus Star Sword sect to help me complete the mission given to me by the Realm Lord. Aren't you guys here to cause trouble to obstruct the mission given to us by the Realm Lord, look down on the Realm Lord, and provoke him? What? Is your Black Hawk cult trying to rebel? Su Yun snorted. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone was shocked. For no reason at all, the Black Hawk cult was suddenly accused of rebelling. How could this be? Yin Dongha was rendered speechless by Su Yun's words. He did not know how to refute. His eyes were wide open. The sword in his hand was tightly gripped. If not for the divine leaf in Su Yun's hand, he would have immediately rushed up and slashed him in half. Master Su Yun. A few of the Lotus Star Sword sect disciples looked at Su Yun excitedly. At that moment, they felt that the person in front of them was like the savior of the sect. Maybe the Lotus Star Sword sect could rely on him to survive this calamity today. Rebellion? Master Su Yun, your words are a little serious. Our Black Hawk cult belongs to the Wanhua realm after all, and naturally belongs to the people of the Wanhua realm. Even if you lend us 100 guts, we would never dare to be disrespectful to the Realm Lord. Your words are a little serious. At this moment, the black-clothed woman suddenly laughed and walked out. She threw a few coquettish glances at Su Yun, and seeing that Su Yun was unmoved, she puffed out her breasts and continued. However, Master Su Yun, you said that you are here to carry out a mission with the Realm Lord God's leave. May I ask what mission it is? Why must you ask the Lotus Star Sword sect for help? In terms of strength, our Black Hawk cult is much stronger than the Lotus Star Sword sect. Why don't you ask for our help? What mission? Of course it's a secret mission. How can it be revealed so easily? If Master Su Yun is not willing to say it, then we do not know. As the saying goes, those who do not know are innocent. We can continue to challenge the Lotus Star Sword sect. I believe that as long as we do not hurt you, I believe that even the Realm Lord will not do anything to us, right? The black-dressed lady laughed. Hearing that, Su Yun's face darkened. So that means you guys plan to use force? Is there any other choice? The black-clothed woman's smile gradually faded. Today, we have to do it. If we do not destroy the Lotus Star Sword sect, do we still have the face to return to the sect? Very good. Su Yun nodded his head and immediately pulled out the death sword from his back. The pitch-black sword, under the release of the evil chi, looked extremely ghostly. He held the death sword upside down, stabbed into the ground, stared at the sword envoy, and said coldly, Today, I will protect you in the Lotus Star Sword sect. Since you want to challenge me, then I will represent the Lotus Star Sword sect to fight with you. What? The black-clothed woman and the sword envoy were both shocked. Master Su Yun, my Lotus Star Sword sect will forever remember this favor. But this is a matter of my Lotus Star Sword sect. You do not need to get involved at all. Please return to the backyard first. I will take care of everything here. The old sect leader hurriedly came up and said. But Su Yun shook his head and said, I also heard it just now. You seem to still be injured. It is inconvenient for you to fight. If not, Xing Wenlu would not force you to go up on stage, right? The old sect leader was silent for a moment, then nodded helplessly. The other party knew that I was injured. That's why they came knocking on my door. But Master Su Yun, you cannot have any mishaps. Otherwise, we will not be able to bear the consequences. You can't take it, and they can't take it either. Don't worry, if I fight, they will definitely be afraid, and won't be my match in terms of aura. This way, I have already won by 3 points, and when the time comes, you can lend me a hand. Defeating them won't be difficult. No way. The sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect rejected without hesitation. He did not explain further, as though he knew that it was useless to continue persuading Su Yun. He directly walked in front of Su Yun and said, Today's matter should be settled by my Lotus Star Sword sect. Master Su Yun has nothing to do with this matter. Old sect leader, don't say any more. The old sect leader's attitude was very firm. He turned and nodded at Su Yun, then turned his head and pulled out a snow-white sword that was like a lotus and directly pierced towards the erased seal in the center. Seeing that, Su Yin opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. The sect leader had already pierced his sword into the array, and there was no room for redemption. However, thinking about it carefully, it was indeed reasonable. If in this critical moment, the sect leader did not step forward to save the sect, even if Su Yun relied on the Realm Master's intimidation to save the Lotus Star Sword sect, then the sect would only exist in name. After all, what happened today was seen by many disciples. They would think that their sect leader was no longer able to protect the sect, and that the sect had completely declined. Therefore, if the sect leader did not fight today, he would lose. He had to step forward. Your Lotus Star Sword sect still has some backbone. The sword envoy, Yin Donghe, snorted and stepped forward. He pulled out his sword and was about to stab into the array seal to form a contract with the old sect leader and fight. But at this time, the black-clothed woman beside him anxiously raised her hand and stopped Yin Donghe. "What are you doing?" Yin Donghe looked at the woman with dissatisfaction. The lady smiled lightly and said, "Lord Sword Envoy, you have fought continuously with the experts of the Lotus Star Sword sect and have consumed a lot of your profound qi. Now that you're fighting against the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect, I'm afraid you will suffer a huge loss." Hearing that, Yin Donghe's eyes were filled with displeasure, but he did not say it out loud. In fact, he agreed with the woman's words. He was not in a good state right now, especially after the battle with Qing Wenlu. He had used up more than half of the profound qi in his body. Although the Black Hawk cult had provided him with a lot of good recovery pills, how could he make up for it in such a short period of time? However, the lady turned her head and smiled at the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect. "Everyone, don't be too anxious. Our Black Hawk cult is strong and has many experts. It is impossible for us to always send Lord Sword Envoy to fight. Lord Sword Envoy, please rest for a while and let the other disciples help you deal with this sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect." After the woman finished speaking, she clapped her hands. The Black Hawk cult disciples behind them split apart, and 3 people wearing the same black Blade Master cloths walked out. All 3 of them wore Blade Master cloths and carried long swords. Their expressions were very cold, and their eyes flickered with an indescribable coldness. The 3 of them had the same expressions, movements, and auras. If not for their different appearances, everyone would have thought that the 3 of them were triplets. The first man took a few steps forward, pulled out his sword, and stabbed into the array seal. Crash! As the 2 swords entered the formation immediately released a circle of dazzling light. Su Yun retreated a few steps, his eyes staring intently at the array. However, the sect leader and the Black Hawk cult disciples spoke at the same time. "Those who are defeated quickly leave the Lotus Star Sword sect and never enter again. Those who are defeated quickly hand over the Lotus Star Sword sect and its sword technique." After the 2 of them finished speaking, the 2 swords in the formation flew into the air at the same time. However, when the 2 swords left the sword formation, they left behind 2 sword shadows that glowed with light. It was extremely magical. The 2 of them stared at their respective swords in the air and rushed over in unison, extending their hands to catch the swords. Although the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect was injured, his skills were still extraordinary. The moment his old hand grabbed onto the sword, he was like a meteor as he flew through the air, sometimes to the left, sometimes to the right, making it impossible to see his figure clearly. The sect leader's focus was on the Sword Envoy. As long as he defeated the Sword Envoy, these people from the Black Hawk cult would not be a problem. Thus, he did not dare to waste time on these people. After quickly moving around, his aura stabilized and his power spiraled, heading straight for that person. When the sword fell on that person's head, the sword chi in the air seemed to resonate at this moment and gathered together. The people below seemed to see a huge lotus falling down like a meteor. It was extremely beautiful and terrifying. "This is the Lotus Star Sword art?" Sword Envoy Yin Donghe cried out involuntarily. Chapter 575. The dazzling sword technique descended from the sky. The majestic and mysterious sword technique contained both hardness and softness. It pressed down from above, leaving an indelible impression on the hearts of everyone below. Black Hawk's soaring chi. That person did not show any weakness. With a low roar, all the hair on his body suddenly stood up. A large amount of extremely sharp, profound energy that was like a cold blade exploded out, transforming into a goshawk that flew into the sky. He actually dares to fight against the sect leader head-on. Below, the left protector Bu Ming cried out in surprise. This person doesn't know the difference between life and death. Looks like this attack will be enough to decide the victor. Is the Black Hawk cult bullying our Lotus Star Sword sect for not having anyone? A bunch of despicable fellows. When the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect saw that person's actions, they were filled with righteous indignation and anger. However, being angry was being angry. At this moment, no one's attention was not focused on that vast and majestic attack. In a trance, the people saw a majestic and burly goshawk crashing into a mysterious white lotus. Dawn! A colorful ripple spread out from the white lotus. Half of the ripple flew towards the sky, while the other half crashed into the ground. Before the ripple even reached the ground, the people on the ground could already feel the terrifying, destructive power of the ripple. Immediately, their faces turned deathly pale, and they screamed madly. Retreat! Retreat! Let's go! Those above the sky spirit master, quickly activate your magic treasure defense. The rest of you, leave this place immediately. The black-clothed woman shouted at the door. Everyone retreat to the sect. Activate the protective barrier. Faster. The Lotus Star Sword sect's left protector Bu Ming shouted in a low voice. The scene became chaotic. People were like ants on a hot pan, scurrying in all directions. In just a few breaths of time, the crowded dueling ground was immediately empty, and everyone dispersed towards the back. Even the powerful sword envoy, Yin Donghe, had no choice but to retreat. Although he had the ability to receive the profound qi that came out from the fight between the two, even if he received it, he would have to consume a lot of profound energy. The ripples attacked, shattering all the roof tiles below. The plants were crushed and stuck to the ground like a thin film. Other than the mystical array seal, everything in the surroundings was turned to dust. Dong, 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 dong. A terrifying aura constantly surged in the air as thunderous booms rang out. The goshawk and the white lotus collided fiercely in the air, unable to separate. At this moment, it was a battle of profound strength. Whether it was the sect leader or the expert from the Black Hawk Hall, if they were to slack off in the slightest, then the outcome of this battle would definitely be decided. Behind the white lotus was the sect leader's snow-white longsword. The tip of the sword was pressed against the root of the white lotus, and the body of the sword was trembling. It was as if the sky was pressing down, and the tail of the goshawk was the sword of the Black Hawk Hall's expert. The body of the sword was surrounded by a thick gray, profound qi, like a small tornado. The clouds flowed along with the profound energy, and these two auras were the most dazzling in the sky, as if they wanted to stir up the entire sky. Su Yun looked up into the sky, only to see that the sect leader's face was pale white, perspiration dripping down, and the sword in his hand was trembling slightly. On the other hand, it was even more strenuous for him. The veins on his forehead were bulging, and his eyes were bloodshot. It was as if he was releasing the last bit of his strength. According to normal standards, this person was definitely not a match for the sect leader. But from the looks of it, the other party had used the sect leader's old injuries to have such a chance. Break! Suddenly, the sect leader roared angrily. The holy and magnificent white lotus released a circle of light. Like a blooming flower, it was incomparably dazzling as it smashed downwards. The goshawk let out a sorrowful cry. Then its wings broke and its body shattered. The terrifying white lotus followed the pressure of the sword and smashed downwards, causing explosions to ring out in the air like firecrackers. The spirit cultivator who was supporting the goshawk opened his eyes wide, looking at the incoming white lotus in shock. His entire body suddenly trembled crazily. His aura was like a dam that had burst, completely collapsing and disintegrating. Crack! A crisp sound rang out. The expert from the Black Hawk Hall's body directly fell from the sky and fiercely crashed onto the ground. A large number of terrifying cracks appeared on his body. Both his hands and feet were broken, leaving behind only a stick, and the sword in his hand was also broken into several pieces. He had long since lost his fighting strength due to his injuries, and from the looks of it, even his cultivation had been emptied. The outcome had been decided. All right. The people of the Lotus Star Sword sect below let out waves of excited roars. The tsunami-like cheers rang out incessantly. The white-haired, white-bearded sect leader landed gracefully and stared at the crippled Black Hawk Hall expert on the ground with a dignified gaze. He coldly snorted, "Are you willing to withdraw?" "Of course not." Without waiting for the expert to speak, the black-clothed woman behind him took the initiative to speak. She chuckled, pulled out the sword from her waist, and directly pierced towards a man's head. That person's head was immediately pierced through. He didn't even have the time to struggle before he died. The light sword in the erase seal also disappeared in an instant. Once the person who had made the contract died, the erase seal automatically judged the other party as refusing to abide by the previous agreement. That person's body also turned into sand and disappeared like Qinwenlu. When everyone saw this, their anger soared to the sky. Seeing this, the sect leader's eyes narrowed. "So despicable. You are violating the rules of the mountain." Left Protector Buming clenched his teeth and said, "What violation of the mountain rules? This person violated our sect rules before, and according to the sect rules, he should be executed. I'm just enforcing the sect rules now. Maybe the time is not right, but there doesn't seem to be any rules in the Linglong Mountain that forbids enforcing the sect rules at this time, right?" The black-clothed woman laughed. You were clearly afraid that he would be afraid of death and agree to the previous agreement. So you took advantage of this loophole. Your Black Hawk cult is so shameless." Buming cursed. "Shameless," the black-clothed woman disdainfully said. "If you don't accept it, you can do the same." Hearing that, Buming was furious, but he didn't know how to refute. "Protector Boo, don't be angry. The more they do this, the more the world will feel that they are despicable. This sect won't last long. Let's just watch." The sect leader said in a deep voice. Buming nodded, snorted at the woman, and then retreated to the side. The black-clothed woman said to the remaining two people, "You can only win, you can't lose. Do you understand? If you fail, there will only be death. This is what the sect leader has said." "Yes." The two of them replied firmly, their eyes overflowing with determination. Following that, the second expert of the Black Hawk cult walked out and pierced the sword at his waist into the erase seal. Seeing this, the sect leader did not bat an eyelid and threw his own sword into it. The contract was formed, and the two of them drew their swords and soared into the sky, once again fighting fiercely. This expert was clearly much more cautious than the previous one. He was no longer as aggressive as before, nor did he dare to fight head-on with his opponent. He only used defensive measures. The people below watched attentively. Most of the people from the Lotus Star Sword sect had worried expressions on their faces, while the people from the Black Hawk cult were watching from the sidelines. In their opinion, the Black Hawk cult would definitely win this trip, so there was nothing to worry about. That's right, the other party has been forced to the point where even the sect leader has to take action. What other trump cards could he have? "Protector Buming, can you participate in the battle?" Su Yun retracted his gaze from the sky and walked towards the middle-aged woman and said. Hearing that, Buming turned his head to look at Su Yun. He was slightly startled and then anxiously bowed. "So it's Master Su Yun. Master Su Yun, I was out on some matters a while ago and was unable to pay my respects to you. Please forgive me. At a time like this, don't bother about it. I want to know if you can still fight," Su Yun said. Hearing that, Buming revealed a troubled look and then shook his head. "Master, you might be disappointed. Although I am the protector of the Lotus Star Sword sect, my cultivation is not high. 30 years ago, when I was out on a mission, I was heavily injured, and my cultivation was crippled by more than half. My current strength is not even in the Sky Spirit Master. How can I fight? Hearing that, Su Yun was startled. Although she could not see through Bu Ming's cultivation, her chi was extremely weak. She was most likely wearing the same concealment magic treasure as Long Zhen's wristband. Since that's the case, is there any other expert in the Lotus Star Sword sect who can fight against him? Su Yun asked. The black dress lady is using these experts to exhaust the sect leader. If the sect leader were to fight continuously and then fight against the sword envoys, I'm afraid he would not have a chance of winning. And once he is defeated, the Lotus Star Sword sect will be finished. Consumption? Bu Ming was startled. He anxiously looked up into the sky, and then his face became gloomy. Chintai Zhongxing. Bu Ming shouted loudly. Two men wearing white lotus robes immediately walked out from the crowd. The man held a long sword in his hand, and both of them had an extraordinary aura. As the elites of the sect, this is the moment of crisis for the sect. Do you have the courage to fight against the next opponent? Bu Ming said solemnly. We will not shirk our duty to sacrifice ourselves for the sect. The two of them shouted without hesitation. Very good. Bu Ming nodded. Su Yun glanced at the two of them, only to see that they were only at the second stage of the Sky Spirit Master, and could not help but shake his head. Protector Bu, is there no one stronger? That sword envoy Yindong's cultivation is very strong. We were careless before, and the Black Hawk cult came prepared. Just a while ago, all of our sex experts were assassinated. Although no one died, they all suffered different degrees of injuries, and there are not many who can fight. I reckon that the people who attacked our sex experts must be the work of the Black Hawk cult. Their goal is to prepare for today's challenge. So it's like that. Su Yun's expression was also rather helpless. The Lotus Star Sword sect was truly miserable, but he did not know if it was because the Lotus Star Sword sect was too weak, or if it was because the Black Hawk cult was too strong. The experts of his own sect had been attacked. Then what cultivation level would the experts of the Black Hawk cult be? Since the other party wants to exhaust us, then we can only accompany them. This is the Lotus Star Sword sect after all, and there are as many people who dare to die as the sea. I do not believe that the people of the Black Hawk cult can kill everyone here. Bu Ming said with determination. Seeing the determination in her eyes, Su Yun nodded in admiration. Dong! At this time, another violent explosion sounded out in the air. A figure fell from the sky and smashed into the ground. Above the figure was the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect. He held the sword in one hand, and the tip of the sword had already pierced through the heart of the expert from the Black Hawk cult. I know that you won't retreat so easily. Since that's the case, I won't show any mercy. The sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect said coldly. This sword strike is for Protector Qing. As the sound of his voice faded, the snow-white sword slashed towards the expert's head. The sharp sword pierced through his head like lightning, splitting it in half. Chapter 576. In the pitch-black palace, there were two huge stone eagles. The stone eagles were 4 meters tall, and they were extremely lifelike. The surface of the stone eagle was covered with mysterious talismans, and these talismans were like tadpoles that covered the entire stone eagle statue. At this moment, a person stood quietly in the middle of the 2 stone eagle statues. This person's gaze lightly swept across the talisman on the stone eagle, as if he was thinking about something. At this time, a slightly plump middle-aged man with long hair walked in quickly from the entrance of palace. After the man entered the palace, he immediately knelt down on one knee and said respectfully, "Greetings, sect leader." Yes. The person standing in the middle of the stone eagle nodded and said indifferently, "How is it? Most of the experts of the Lotus Star Sword sect have been killed by the Lord Sword Envoy. Qing Wenlu has died in battle, and now the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect has already made his move and is currently fighting fiercely with the third guard." The man said. The main chi meridian in his body was damaged, and his strength dropped greatly. The profound chi is no longer as dense as before. If he was at his peak, even I would not be able to shake him, but now that he is injured, this is the best time for our Black Hawk cult to annex the Lotus Star Sword sect. The sect leader of the Black Hawk cult said in a deep voice, "As long as the Lotus Star Sword sect is destroyed, I will obtain the Lotus Star Sword and its sword techniques, and together with the Lotus Star Sword Techniques remnant scroll that I am holding, it will be enough to restore the Lotus Star Sword sect. At that time, I will use the Black Hawk Mysterious Iron to recast the Lotus Star Sword sect. Then, our Black Hawk cult will definitely be able to repeat the glory of the Lotus Star Sword sect, kill our way out of the Wanhua realm, swallow the 10,000 realms, and step onto the peak of the world. When the person below heard this, he knelt down excitedly and shouted, "Long live the sect leader! Long live the sect leader!" Sigh. The Black Hawk cult leader waved his hand and said indifferently, "Right now, all of this is just a painting. The most important thing is to see if Yin Dongha can kill the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect." Lord Sword Envoy has obtained a fortuitous encounter and obtained the inheritance of 1,000 years of supreme expert cultivation. His current strength is no longer the same as before. How can he not defeat an injured old thief? Sect leader is not worried. The man laughed and continued, "However, sect leader, this subordinate has a question. I don't know if I should say it or not." "Speak." The man hesitated for a moment, then said, "Sect leader, now that the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect is injured, why didn't you personally take action at this critical juncture and destroy the Lotus Star Sword sect in one fell swoop? Didn't you say it yourself?" He obtained a fortuitous encounter, and his strength increased explosively, enough to deal with that old fellow from the Lotus Star Sword sect. "Why should I go?" The Black Hawk Hall leader looked meaningfully at the long-haired middle-aged man and said indifferently, "Furthermore, my Black Hawk Hall has many enemies. If someone were to attack my Black Hawk Hall at this time, who would be the one to defend? If you don't even know this little bit of common sense, how can you be the protector of my Black Hawk cult? This subordinate is stupid." That person hurriedly kowtowed to the ground. "Let's go. Inform me of the situation of the Lotus Star Sword sect as soon as possible." "Yes, this subordinate will take his leave." The man kowtowed to the Black Hawk Hall leader and respectfully retreated. However, not long after, that person returned to the hall. Was it this time? The Black Hawk Hall leader, who had just turned around to look at the stone eagle talisman, said unhappily, "It's like this, sect leader. There's someone outside who says he has something important to see you about." The man said carefully, "Who is it?" The Black Hawk Hall leader frowned. He said his name is Xiao Huailin. He has just entered the Wanhua realm and specially came to the Linglong Mountain to study. "Study? Yes." The man laughed. "Xiao Huailin's qi is not ordinary. The profound qi is dense. I'm afraid his strength is not bad. If we can recruit him into our Black Hawk Hall, it will definitely make our Black Hawk Hall even stronger." "Oh." The Black Hawk Hall leader thought for a moment, then said, "Since that's the case, then bring him in." "Yes, sect leader." The man retreated, and not long after, he led a young man wearing a fiery red Blade Master uniform with a blood-red sword on his back. The man had a long braid on his back. He was extremely tall, thin, and had a very good physique. With a smile on his face, he walked into the hall. When he saw the Black Hawk Hall leader, he immediately took a few steps forward and cupped his fists. "Xiao Huailin greets the sect leader. I heard from Protector Liu that you are here to study." The Black Hawk Hall leader sized up the man, carefully felt the aura on his body, and asked. "That's right," Xiao Huailin said. "In third stage of Sky Spirit Master cultivation. Not bad, not bad. He is a talent that can be made." The Black Hawk Hall leader nodded and said, "Since you want to study, I will not be stingy. You can temporarily join my Black Hawk Hall." "Join the Black Hawk Hall?" Xiao Huailin was startled for a moment, then laughed. "I said to study, not to join the Black Hawk Hall." "Then do you want to learn the superior sword techniques of my Black Hawk Hall as an outsider?" The sect leader snorted. "If that's the case, then hurry up and leave. There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world." "Oh," Xiao Huailin nodded and laughed. "Since that's the case, then I will join. That's more like it. But I don't want to be an ordinary disciple." Xiao Huailin continued. The Black Hawk Hall leader frowned. He was extremely angry at Xiao Huailin's rude words and asked, "Then what do you want to do?" Xiao Huailin walked left and right, looking at the people above him with a face full of ridicule, and laughed. To be the sect leader of the Black Hawk Hall? What do you think? How dare you? Protector Lu and the Black Hawk Hall leader were both enraged. Without waiting for the sect leader to make a move, Protector Lu took the lead and rushed forward, one hand turning into an eagle claw, directly grabbing towards Xiao Huailin's head. Since he was a protector, his cultivation was not low either. He was at least at the 4th stage of the Sky Spirit Master. In the Linglong Mountain, Lu Zhen could be considered a top figure. No one could take his black eagle claw head-on. But just as the eagle claw was about to approach Xiao Huailin moved. There was no big movement, nor was there a terrifying speed that made people's eyeballs fall out. There was only a slight movement of his head. Bada! The terrifying black eagle claw slammed into his shoulder. Nothing. Protector Lu's eyes almost popped out. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. Even if he managed to avoid being hit in the vitals, he still managed to hit his shoulder. If it was an ordinary person, his arm would have been crushed. The fiery red Blade Master cloth on Xiao Huailin's body ignited with waves of flames. Protector Lu felt that not only had he struck on a steel, it was more like he had struck onto a piece of red-hot steel. His palm was extremely hot. Ah! He cried out in pain and retreated. Imperial equipment? The Black Hawk Hall leader stared at the fiery red Blade Master cloth on Xiao Huailin's body and exclaimed softly, "Hee, is this how your Black Hawk cult treats their guests? TSK, TSK, TSK. Quite like me." Xiao Huailin turned around, looked at Protector Lu and laughed. "Damn it, who the hell are you?" Protector Lu clenched his teeth as he held onto his hand. At this moment, his palm had almost melted through. The burning power of the clothes was too terrifying. "Didn't I tell you my name? My name is Xiao Huailin. I'm just a scholar, but someone who knows me gave me a title." The corner of Xiao Huailin's mouth suddenly raised into a sinister smile. "Have you heard of the number 1 sword in the world?" As soon as he finished speaking, his arms suddenly raised, and the blood-red slender sword was abruptly pulled out, and he directly slashed towards the top of Protector Lu's head. Eagle Ascension. Protector Lu bellowed furiously as the profound energy in his entire body surged towards his arms like a surging sea. In an instant, his arms were harder than steel and sturdier than Mount Tai. His boundless defensive power was like a city wall, incomparably thick. The Black Hawk Hall leader focused his eyes and stared at Protector Lu. He knew that Protector Lu, who was proficient in defense, was not someone an ordinary person could shake. His arms were probably even harder than his sword. However, crack. A crisp sound rang out. Protector Lu's arms were suddenly cut off, and at the same time, his body was directly split into two, and he died. What? The Black Hawk Hall leader's eyes widened as he looked at this scene in shock. However, Protector Lu's body had been cut in half, and the place where it had been cut was fiery red. White smoke floated out, and the blood that had just flowed out of his body was immediately roasted into gas when it passed through the fiery red, a 4th stage Sky Spirit Master existence with a single sword strike. This is definitely not something that a 3rd stage Sky Spirit Master cultivator can do. Even if you have Imperial equipment in your hands, a divine equipment, it is still impossible for you to do it. What exactly is your cultivation level? The Black Hawk Hall leader roared in shock. He understood that the young man in front of him had clearly used a magic treasure to tamper with his cultivation level. Why do you always have to ask this boring question? You've asked it over and over again. Aren't you tired of it? Xiao Huailin held onto the blood-red slender sword. With a helpless look on his face, he then said indifferently, "I already said, I am here to learn. I have always heard that the Black Hawk Hall sword techniques are outstanding. I am here to learn and challenge. This Protector Lu is not much, in my opinion. I still need Sect Leader to personally make a move if you do not defeat me. Then the Black Hawk Hall will turn into the dust of history today." With that, Xiao Huailin did not hold back. He immediately rushed forward and slashed at the Black Hawk Hall leader. The sword edge rippled with a faint red light in the air, like a meteorite cutting through the sky in the dark night. The Black Hawk Hall leader hurriedly retreated. He knew that he would not be able to have a good ending today, so he could only clench his teeth and pull out his sword to fight. However, as he fought, he did not forget to crush the order badge on his waist. This special sect leader token that he had personally refined was actually his signal device. When the token was broken, all the Black Hawk Hall disciples would receive a summons from the sect leader. Very quickly, countless experts from the Black Hawk Hall began to rush over. You came to the Black Hawk Hall to behave atrociously. No matter what, you will stay here today. The Black Hawk Hall leader roared as he quickly waved his sword to block his opponent's fierce attacks. I didn't say I was going to leave. If I don't defeat you, how can I leave so willingly? Xiao Huailin laughed. Seeing how easily the other party received his attack, the Black Hawk Hall leader's face became gloomy. He was a 7th stage Sky Spirit Master cultivator and was already a famous figure in the Linglong Mountain. No one dared to behave atrociously in front of him, but at this moment, not only had this person exchanged over 100 moves with him, he did not even gasp for breath. Whatever, I'll stall him first. When the others come, I'll surround him here, and all the treasures on his body will belong to me. The Black Hawk Hall leader pondered. Hualala. At this moment, a large number of sounds came from outside the palace, followed by the rustling of footsteps. He's here. The Black Hawk Hall leader was overjoyed. Chapter 577. Dense footsteps resounded throughout the hall. Xiao Huailin, who was still fighting with the Black Hawk cult leader, increased his speed and suddenly pulled away from the other party, standing in the center of the hall. He turned his head and looked at the entrance of the hall, only to see that it was filled with experts from the Black Hawk cult. Sect leader, what happened? Alu. Protector Lu, how? How did he die? Sect leader, who killed Protector Lu? Who is this person? When the elites of the Black Hawk cult saw the devastated hall and the dismembered Protector Lu, their eyes widened as they exclaimed in shock. However, the Black Hawk cult leader did not explain anything and directly pointed at Xiao Huailin and shouted, "Destroy this person!" "Yes, sir!" Everyone shouted and rushed over in unison. Facing the Black Hawk cult experts that were like a tide, Xiao Huailin did not show any signs of fear. With a sneer on his face, he turned his head and stared at the Black Hawk cult leader and said, "I came here today with the intention of learning from you, but I never thought that you would actually bully me with so many people. This is not in line with the way of a swordsman. Shameless. You are too shameless. Are you even worthy of talking to me about shamelessness? Stinking brat. How dare you come to my Black Hawk cult and behave atrociously? What do you think this is?" The Black Hawk cult leader said coldly, "I will let you know the consequences of offending my Black Hawk cult." After he finished speaking, he raised his hand and growled, "Tear his body apart. I want to imprison his soul and slowly torture him." "Yes, sir." The experts of the Black Hawk cult roared and instantly surrounded him. The profound chi in the bodies of the experts were like running wild horses, crazily surging out. One after another, beautiful profound skill after another smashed toward Xiao Huailin. From the looks of it, no one planned to capture him alive. However, Xiao Huailin did not dodge at all. His handsome face was filled with rage. Despicable. Using numbers to bully the few is too shameless. But since you want help, fine, I'll accept it. But do you think that I don't have any helpers? With that, Xiao Huailin touched his waist and pressed it on his waist. Activating the profound energy, a ball of fiery red light suddenly exploded out from his waist. The terrifying light was shockingly strong. This is the Black Hawk Hall leader was shocked. But listening to it, roar. A heaven-shaking roar exploded out. Following that, an incomparably huge creature came out from Xiao Huailin's belt, and with a terrifying and peerless force, it swept out in all directions, within the Lotus Star Sword sect. The last expert had already entered the stage, and was currently fighting with the experts of the Lotus Star Sword sect. The sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect had fought against 2 people consecutively, and both of them ended in a crushing manner. His strength was revealed, intimidating the world, and the beautiful and terrifying profound skill was still hard to erase in everyone's hearts. However, he was injured and had consumed too much of his profound chi, so he could only temporarily send someone else to take the field. However, it would be fine if he could win, but if he lost, he would only die. The 3 experts sent out by the Black Hawk Hall were all extraordinary people. Although they were not a match for the sect leader, against these disciples, they were like slaughtering pigs and dogs, wantonly killing them. The people of the Lotus Star Sword sect could not last more than 100 rounds before they were defeated. In the blink of an eye, for people had died, causing the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect to frown. When the 5th person was about to enter the stage, he had no choice but to stand up and stab his sword into the erased seal to fight. Seeing this scene, Su Yun could not help but sigh. This was the sorrow of a small sect. When they truly encountered a difficult situation, there were simply too few experts who could stand out. On the other hand, those big sects had many disciples and many outstanding talents. In order to gain a higher position, some people would always fight with their lives on the line in times of danger. Originally, he wanted to quickly find news of his parents, but now, such a thing had happened in the Lotus Star Sword sect. If it was unrelated, Su Yun could have just left and was not willing to get involved in this dispute. However, the Lotus Star Sword sect had treated him well. If he did not help, Su Yun would not feel guilty. This was how he was. He would always remember the small favors that others had given him, and he would always keep the small grudges that others had against him in his heart. The black-clothed woman suddenly frowned. She took off a plate from her waist and took a few glances at it. Waves of luster floated on the card, and a pattern was faintly discernible within the light. Seeing this, Yin Donghe, who was at the side, asked, "What's wrong?" "The sect leader has issued an emergency order," the black-clothed woman said in a deep voice. "Did something happen in the sect?" Yin Donghe said solemnly, "The news of us challenging the Lotus Star Sword sect has probably already spread throughout the entire Linglong Mountain, and there are many enemies in the sect, so there might be people who will come and challenge our sect at this time. But don't worry, the sect leader has already made preparations. We can just continue with our lives. The sect leader has already instructed us in advance. If there really is a situation, there's no need to care about it. He will take care of it." The woman hung the medallion back on her waist and laughed softly. "No matter what, we have to end the battle here as soon as possible," Yin Donghe said solemnly. "The pills and fruits that the sect leader has bestowed me are extraordinary. I feel that they're almost there. When this battle is over, let me go on stage. I think that old fellow is already at his limit. His current strength is probably not even 30% of his normal strength. It is a good opportunity to kill him. After I kill him, I will forcefully seize his soul, absorb it, and increase my cultivation. Do as you see fit. In any case, the sect leader has requested that you bring the Lotus Star Sword and the Lotus Star Sword technique back to the sect. This is a must." Crash! A strange sound rang out once again. A ball of blood burst out in the air. The last expert of the Black Hawk cult was sliced apart by the sword and died on the spot. "All right." The people from the Lotus Star Sword sect below roared out excitedly once again. The scene was extremely lively. The sect leader landed on the ground with a calm expression. He held his sword in one hand and pointed it at the ground. As the wind blew, his white hair and beard gently swayed. In the end, he was still the head of a sect. Even if the cultivation of the disciples of the Lotus Star Sword sect was not good, he, the leader, was not someone with an undeserved reputation. Yin Donghe's eyes were filled with fighting spirit. Without saying a word, he took 3 steps forward, pulled out his sword, and fiercely thrusted it towards the erased seal. Seeing that, the sect leader once again held his sword and was about to stab, but just as he moved, his face suddenly paled. His footsteps trembled as if he was out of breath. Not good. After a series of fierce battles, the sect leader's profound qi is already very low. Bu Ming shouted anxiously. "This battle is very disadvantageous to us. Sect leader, you can't go up anymore. Sect leader, you should rest for now. Let me fight in your place in this battle." "I'll fight." "No, let me do it." Waves of anxious and concerned voices rang out. The sect leader opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but in the end, he did not say anything. He only lightly shook his head, indicating for everyone not to try to be brave. If they went up, they would only be throwing their lives away. However, if he were to force himself to fight against this sword envoy with the strength of an injured body, would there be a chance of victory? Many people present knew that the chances of this happening were very small. Why don't you let me give it a try? At this moment, a sword suddenly flew over from the other side and pierced into the erased seal. Seeing that, everyone went into an uproar. "This is Lord Su Yin, don't!" The sect leader shouted anxiously. But it was too late. Su Yun's speed was too fast. A sword had already flown over. He had already made his decision. The erased seal began to glow. Lord Su Yun. Bu Ming looked at the black-cloaked man who walked out from the crowd in shock, his face filled with shock. Even Yin Donghe and the black-clothed woman were extremely surprised. At this time, no one would have thought that Su Yun would actually stand up and take over this rotten matter. "Lord Su Yun, why are you doing this?" The old sect leader looked at the sword that had pierced into the erased seal and asked with a heavy sigh. "Old sect leader, although the reason why you are searching for my parents' whereabouts is because of this divine leaf, I'm a person who remembers favors. You are willing to do things for me and help me. Why can't I do something for you? Today, when the Lotus Star Sword sect is in trouble, how can I stand by and watch? But you're not a member of the Lotus Star Sword sect. What authority do you have to interfere in this matter? Lord Su Yun, I think it would be better for you to quickly leave this place. In case we start fighting later and injure you, that would not be good." Without waiting for the old sect leader to speak, the black-clothed woman spoke. "Can't people who aren't from the Lotus Star Sword sect participate in the fight?" The corner of Su Yun's mouth raised and said, "That's easy." With that, he turned around, cupped his fists, and bowed to the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect and said, "Sect leader, please accept me into the sect." "Lord Su Yun, this old sect leader, since things have come to this, I have no other choice. Since I am unable to use the deterrence of the Realm Lord to force the Black Hawk cult to retreat, I can only rely on my own abilities. Although Su Yun's cultivation is not high, I am willing to do my part," Su Yun said. Hearing that, the old sect leader fell silent. He opened his dim eyes and looked at Su Yun, but for some reason, his pair of sunken and turbid eyes revealed a strange luster that was hard to explain. He looked at Su Yun with glowing eyes, and after a long time, he could not help but nod his head. Good, Su Yun, since you are so determined, if I were to persuade you again, it would seem like I'm being pretentious. Now, I will officially announce that you have become a member of my Lotus Star Sword sect, and will temporarily be a protector. Thank you, sect leader, Su Yun said. The old sect leader then turned his head and shouted to Bu Ming, who was beside him. Protector Bu, go and retrieve our sect's treasures, Lotus Star Sword and Lotus Star Sword Technique. Sect leader, Bu Ming was startled. His expression changed slightly, but he did not ask anything. He immediately turned around and led a few disciples away. Not long after, 2 treasure boxes were solemnly brought over by them. One of the treasure boxes looked like a sword sheath. It was slender and had a lotus flower imprinted on its face. The other treasure box was square and golden in color. It was extremely mystical. The old sect leader received the 2 treasure boxes and solemnly placed them in front of him. Lotus Star Sword and its sword technique. The black-clothed woman's eyes lit up as she stared at the 2 treasure boxes. Today, since Su Yun has helped us, we are naturally not unjust people. Su Yun, you can fight with these people on behalf of our sect. Do not be afraid. If you lose, I will hand over the Lotus Star Sword and the sword technique to them. You will definitely not have to worry about your life. The old sect leader said solemnly. Chapter 578. As soon as the old sect leader finished speaking, the surroundings went into an uproar. Even Su Yun was shocked. Who would have thought that the old sect leader would actually plan to hand over these treasures? Sect leader, this isn't too good, right? Bu Ming said anxiously. If the Lotus Star Sword and the sword technique were to be handed over, it would mean that the Lotus Star Sword sect would be completely disbanded. Which sect leader would dare to hand over the fate of a sect to a person they had known for less than a month? However, the old sect leader shook his head and said, "In fact, I am already powerless to fight. With Su Yun's help, what else do we have to say? If he wins, it will be for the best. If he loses, no matter what, we must protect his life. This matter originally had nothing to do with him. Since he acted out of righteousness, how could we disregard the lives of others for the sake of treasures? Although my Lotus Star Sword sect is not some big sect, we still have to understand gratitude. Do you understand? When Bu Ming and the others heard this, they hurriedly cupped their fists and bowed. Seeing that, the black-clothed woman's worried face relaxed. I was worried about Lord Su Yun's life before. He has the divine leaf and has a close relationship with the Realm Lord. If he dies here, my Black Hawk cult will definitely suffer a great calamity, but that old fellow from the Lotus Star Sword sect is quite knowledgeable. In this way, Lord Sword Envoy, you do not need to show mercy. As long as you defeat Lord Su Yun, then our mission this time will be completed. The black-dressed lady laughed. She sized Su Yun up and down and laughed. He is a pretty boy. Lord Sword Envoy, you must be gentle. This person is wearing a shielding magic treasure. I am unable to see through his cultivation. However, since he dares to appear, I am afraid he is confident. I cannot be careless. Yin Dongha said solemnly. Don't worry, the other party has only just entered the Sky Spirit Master. The black-clothed woman said. Yin Dongha turned his head to look at him. How do you know? I have an anti-insight magic tool on me. Although I'm unable to completely reverse it, I can still capture a trace of his profound qi. I do not know what his cultivation is exactly, but from the looks of this qi, he is just an existence that has just entered the Sky Spirit Master. Just entered the Sky Spirit Master? Then how do you have the guts to fight with me? Anger surfaced on Yin Dongha's face. Is he looking down on me? Master Sword Envoy, you don't have to be angry. I can tell what kind of mentality Su Yun has. Lord Sword Envoy, let me speak the truth. Although your cultivation has increased greatly and is no longer the same as before, there is still a gap between you and the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect. I'm not wrong. You are around the 5th stage of the Sky Spirit Master, and this sect leader is at least at the peak of the 7th stage. If it was in the past, I am afraid that even 10 of you would not be a match for this sect leader of the Lotus Star sect. But today, you are able to contend against him. Firstly, it is because he is injured, the main chi meridian is broken, and his strength has dropped greatly. Secondly, it is also because the previous battle has used up a small amount of his profound strength, and to the current him, I am afraid that his fighting strength is not even 10% of what it was in the past, so you're naturally confident of victory. Hearing this, the anger on Yin Dongha's face became even more intense. He said solemnly, What do you mean by that? Could it be that I was afraid of that old man when he was at his peak? Of course not. Ayaya, Lord Sword Envoy, please don't be angry. Please listen to me finish. The black-dressed lady laughed. In fact, this Su Yun is also in a similar situation. The reason why he dares to challenge you with his cultivation of the Sky Spirit Master is also because of this. When you exchange blows with the many experts of the Lotus Star Sword sect, you have consumed a huge amount of profound qi. Your strength has been damaged, and you are no longer your peak condition. Adding that Su Yun has the divine leaf and is a person of the Realm Lord with a respected status. Ordinary people cannot harm him in the slightest. So he relied on these 2 points to challenge you. Otherwise, even if he had 10 guts, he would not dare to do so. Oh, Yin Dongha thought for a moment, then said, Doesn't that mean I can't touch him? As long as I don't kill him. Then I'll cut off his hands and feet, cripple his cultivation. Yin Dongha snorted. That's fine. The black-clothed woman nodded. Yin Dongha's eyes were like an eagle. He stared at Su Yun sharply, and then walked forward towards the erase seal. Seeing that, Su Yun did not hesitate. He stepped forward and walked into the erase seal. Master Su Yun, the contract has not been formed yet, so it is not too late to remove it now. Do you really want to stand up for the Lotus Star Sword sect and fight against us? The black-clothed woman suddenly added and asked. I've already said it very clearly. I don't want to repeat myself. Su Yun said indifferently. Since that's the case, we'll do as you say. There's so many pairs of eyes here, everyone can be our witnesses. If Lord is injured, please don't complain about us to the Realm Lord. The black-robed woman smiled. When everyone heard this, they finally understood what the black-clothed woman meant. It turned out that she was trying to give them a preventive injection. Normally, people would be unyielding, patting their chests and roaring that they would never complain. But when Su Yun heard that, he opened his mouth and said, "That's hard to say." The black-clothed woman's face froze. Everyone was stunned. Who would have thought that Su Yun would actually not play by the rules? As a result, the Black Hawk cult became a little fearful. After all, Su Yun was backed by the Realm Lord. "All right, stop talking nonsense. Since you've already made your decision, I won't care too much about it." Yin Dongha stepped into the array, stared at Su Yun, and shouted, "If you lose, quickly hand over the Lotus Star Sword and the sword technique." His voice was like thunder, like that of a fierce beast. Seeing that, Su Yun did not show any weakness. He stepped into the array, stared at his opponent, and roared, "If you lose, scram." It was a simple word, but it was sonorous and powerful. It was abnormally loud and clear, causing one's eardrums to tremble and their hearts to tremble. Yin Dongha's face changed. He gritted his teeth tightly, his eyes wishing that he could tear the other party apart. The array seal lit up again. Following that, the two swords in the array flew into the air, forming a light sword. Yin Dongha's eyes and hands were quick. The moment the sword flew into the air, he immediately turned into a ray of light and flew towards his own slender sword. Grabbing onto the sword hilt, he directly smashed towards Su Yun's pitch-black sword that was flying into the air. This was a common tactic used by challengers of the array seal. When the sword flew into the air, the battle had already begun. Usually, what people liked to do the most was to knock away the opponent's weapon. As long as the opponent was even a breath slower in controlling their weapon, their chances of winning would be much higher. Clang! The strange black sword was directly blasted away by Yin Dongha, and the moment the sword tip slashed the sword, Yin Dongha did not forget to inject a bit of profound energy from his body into the sword, and when the profound energy attached itself to the sword, it would directly bring the sword far away. Without a sword, what else do you have to fight me with? Bare hands? Relying on magic treasure? Stop your wishful thinking. Yin Dongha roared in his heart, staring at Su Yun, who was still standing at his original position. He immediately slashed towards him. Seeing this scene, the people on the Lotus Star Sword sect side all cried out in disappointment and anxiety. Seeing that Su Yun did not even have a weapon in his hands, some of the people who originally thought highly of Su Yun all turned their heads away, as though they did not dare to look at the following scene. "Lord Su Yun, be careful. Damn it, this Yin Dongha is so despicable. He actually slashed his sword. Lord Su Yun, quickly dodge. Don't fight him head-on." The shouts continued, and a portion of the Lotus Star Sword sect disciples wanted to rush forward immediately to block the attack for Su Yun. However, Su Yun was calm and collected, without the slightest bit of nervousness. He looked at Yin Dongha, who was rushing over, and there was not the slightest bit of anxiety on his face. Whiz! Just as Yin Dongha was about to kill Su Yun, a sound of something tearing through the air came out. What? The black-clothed woman who was watching the battle froze as she looked at the sky in shock. Behind Yin Dongha, a black meteor suddenly exploded, and with lightning speed, it pierced towards his back. Killing intent surged over like the waves of a river. Before Yin Dongha could even get close to Su Yun, he was shocked by the sharp killing intent behind him. He suddenly turned his head, and the death sword had arrived. Puffed. The death sword pierced through Yin Dongha's shoulder. If Yin Dongha had not dodged in time, the sword would have pierced through his heart. However, the attack did not end. Almost at the same time the death sword pierced through Yin Dongha's shoulder, his shoulder suddenly exploded, blood and broken bones splattering into the air. Upon closer inspection, one could see that an evil soul had actually emerged from the pitch-black sword. "Ah!" Yin Dongha roared. The profound chi around his body released, and directly pushed the death sword away. Because of his carelessness, his left shoulder was almost completely crippled. His shoulder blade was shattered, and his left hand was hanging. It was likely that the chi meridian that was connected to his left hand was also mostly damaged. Such a sudden turn of events had shocked almost all the people below. Regardless of whether it was the people from the Lotus Star Sword sect or the people from the Black Hawk cult, They were all staring blankly at the center. No one said a word, and the scene was completely silent, terrifyingly quiet. A second ago, he thought that he would definitely lose, but in the next second, he had reversed the situation. Yin Dongha, maybe your cultivation is stronger than mine, but in my life, Su Yun, have never challenged an opponent weaker than me. Su Yun bellowed. He raised both of his hands and took out two swords, one red and one white, from the sword sheath. With a turn of his body, the two swords were like spears and shot towards Yin Dongha. Two sharp lights suddenly arrived. Yin Dongha danced with one hand, releasing a circle of sword chi to protect his body. The two swords smashed onto the sword chi, but were not bounced back. Instead, they pierced forward, and behind him, the pitch-black sword also attacked, smashing onto the sword chi. The evil soul on the sword blade once again burst out. Waving its claws, it crazily attacked Yin Dongha's sword chi. Yin Dongha clenched his teeth, urging the profound strength to defend, sweat dripping down his face. Is this the imperial sword technique? The old sect leader looked at Yin Dongha, who was surrounded by the three swords in the air, and frowned. There are many sects that are famous for their imperial sword technique, but as far as I know, the imperial sword technique only uses chi to control the sword to achieve the effect of injuring people. In fact, this kind of sword technique is much weaker than the profound skill, and the imperial sword technique is not a powerful technique, so there are not many people who cultivate it. Looking at Lord Su Yun's methods, could it be that he is a member of the imperial sword sect? Bu Ming said. Let's continue watching. The old sect leader said. Yin Dongha was being suppressed. The red, white, and black swords were aggressive. Their auras were ferocious. If this continued, Yin Dongha's profound chi would definitely be exhausted. Looking at Su Yun, who was holding onto the sword art with one hand and staring at him with full concentration, Yin Dongha was filled with anger. He is merely an existence that has just entered the sky spirit master. How dare he show off in front of me? Stinking brat. Yin Dongha growled. He suddenly closed his eyes and quickly chanted an incantation. Chapter 579. The moment Yin Dongha recited the incantation, everyone could feel the rapid flow of qi around his body. At the same time, a large number of curse imprints started to float on the surface of Yin Dongha's skin. These curse imprints circled around his body like birds, and their speed became faster and faster, becoming more and more intense, finally turning into a small blue whirlwind that spread out in all directions. The Death Sword, Immortal Mystical Scarlet Blood Sword, and Tribulation Fire Sword were all forced to tremble. What a dense, profound strength. Su Yun's heart congealed. He raised his hand, causing the Death Sword and the Tribulation Fire Sword to immediately retreat, leaving only the Immortal Mystical Scarlet Blood Sword to continue attacking. With his other hand, he formed a sword art and activated the profound chi. The energy in his body surged out like a flood, accumulating towards the Immortal Mystical Scarlet Blood Sword. In an instant, the sword sheath became restless, and with a rustling sound, a large quantum sword rushed out of the sword sheath, transforming into an unstoppable sword dragon, led by the Immortal Mystical Scarlet Blood Sword. It crashed towards Yin Dongha. The power of the Immortal Mystical Scarlet Blood Sword itself might not be comparable to the Tribulation Fire Sword and the Death Sword, but it was the Mother Sword with the most child swords. Thousands of swords covered the sky, terrifying beyond compare, mixed with the Desolator Mother Sword. When the Sword Dragon was about to approach Yin Dongha, the Desolator Sword activated, and the Sword Dragon suddenly disappeared. What? Yin Dongha was shocked. When had he ever seen such a strange move before? However, following that, Yin Dongha suffered a terrifying attack that was like a torrential storm. The densely packed sharp swords fiercely bombarded the whirlwind formed by the curse imprints. The indescribable powerful impact shook Yin Dongha crazily. He felt like a small boat in a storm, experiencing the cruelest baptism. In the previous intense battles, Yin Dongha had consumed a lot of profound qi. Although he had consumed the top-grade pellet bestowed by the Black Hawk Hall leader to recover in such a short period of time, how much could the profound qi increase? Su Yun had already unleashed his full firepower. He almost planned to use his dense, profound qi to exhaust Yin Donghe. Although Yin Donghe had sensed his opponent's intentions, he was powerless. Yin Donghe was completely suppressed. The people below were completely dumbfounded, especially the black-clothed woman. She was the only one who knew of Su Yun and Yin Donghe's cultivation. She had never expected that the battle would develop to such a state. Crack! Suddenly, the swords in the center of the sword dragon dispersed, and a black light flew towards Su Yun. Su Yun's face darkened. He immediately dodged, and Yin Donghe, who was at the other side, took the opportunity to release profound qi again, dispersing the sword dragon in front of him. Thousands of flying swords were jolted away like stars in the sky. This kid is good at controlling swords, and his strength is extraordinary. However, I have met swordsmen before, and they're usually not good at close combat. I will attack you at close range and see how you defend. Yin Donghe thought. He pushed his speed to the maximum. Like a ray of light, he passed through the densely packed flying swords, got close to Su Yun, and slashed down. What a fast speed! Su Yun's eyes tensed up. With a turn of his footsteps, he transformed into a spinning shadow and dodged to the side, causing the sword to slash into thin air. At this moment, Yin Donghe's left arm was crippled, and he had used up more than half of his profound qi. If they were to fight head-on, he was not afraid of him at all. Su Yun thought. With a wave of his hand, the death sword flew into his hand, while the rest of the sub-swords and the primal sword flew into the sword sheath. Continuing to use the imperial sword would only burden him, and from Yin Donghe's expression, he was most likely planning to fight in close combat with him. After missing his sword, Yin Donghe did not rush to attack, but instead revolved around Su Yun at a high speed. Su Yun dodged the sword, which made him feel that this brat's reaction speed was extraordinary, and maybe his speed was not slow either. But Yin Donghe was not worried. In terms of speed, he was extremely confident. It was hard to imagine Yin Donghe's speed. After about 3 breaths of time, everyone could only see grayish-blue afterimages moving around Su Yun. After 5 breaths of time, Yin Donghe could no longer see anyone and could only hear the sound of strong wind swirling around him. Su Yun stood in the center with his eyes closed, as though he was using his ears to capture the other party's position. In this situation, it was no longer possible for the naked eye to catch traces of the other party. Even if he did, it would only be an afterimage. This is bad. Ming could not help but call out in a low voice. Protector Bu, what's wrong? The disciple beside him asked in confusion. Imperial Sword Imperial is not good at close combat. I never thought that Yin Donghe's speed would be so fast. If you were to get close, I'm afraid Lord Su Yun would be in a dangerous situation. Bu Ming said worriedly. Then why didn't Lord Su Yun take out his sword? Continue to fight with the sword? He actually put it away. Doesn't that mean he admitted defeat? The people beside him exclaimed. Bu Ming shook his head, indicating that he did not know. Everyone stared with their eyes wide open. No one understood what Su Yun was planning. But without a doubt, at that moment, the initiative in this battle had already returned to Yin Donghe's hands. Whiz! Suddenly, an ear-piercing sound of something tearing through the air suddenly rang out. A slender and terrifying sword appeared out of thin air, fiercely slashing towards Su Yun. Be careful! Bu Ming could not help but shout. The situation instantly became critical. The victor has been decided. The black-clothed woman hugged her breasts and chuckled. However, an unexpected scene appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Su Yun, who was like a statue with his eyes closed, took a step back in a relaxed manner. It was just a small step. However, he easily dodged the terrifying slender sword. The tip of the sword swept past his left shoulder and slashed into thin air. What? The black-clothed woman's expression froze as her eyes widened. Bu Ming and the other experts of the Lotus Star Sword sect were also astonished. Their eyeballs seemed as if they were about to fall out of their sockets. Was this a fluke? The same thought popped up in everyone's mind. But it was not over. Yin Donghe once again unleashed his sword that was as fast as lightning with boundless might. The sword that landed on Su Yun's shoulder slashed to the side, intending to cut him in half. The power was still incomparably strong. Then, Su Yin moved again. He flipped over with a grunt, and the sword blade brushed past his waist, almost missing the slightest gap. The profound chi that erupted from the tip of the sword rushed out, like a half-moon slashing into the distance. Seeing that, the disciples of the Black Hawk cult in the distance immediately took out their defensive magic treasure, forming a huge and thick barrier. The sword chi smashed onto the barrier, and actually smashed it into pieces, turning the barrier into rubble, while the spirit cultivator-s behind were smashed into pieces, and the few spirit cultivator-s who were at the front died miserably. Seeing that, the black-clothed woman was shocked and astonished. She was not surprised by Yin Dongha's attack, but by Su Yun's dodging. Not only did he dodge, there was also the terrifying defense of Su Yun's body. Although he had avoided the fatal sword body, the profound chi attached to the sword body was difficult to dodge. At such a close distance, Su Yun himself must have been affected by the profound chi's attack. However, after he dodged, he stood at his original spot. His pale face, under the pitch-black hood, was extremely calm, as if nothing had happened. Where did this guy come from? The black-clothed woman's heart sank. I never thought that you would have such a terrifying speed. You have indeed surprised me. Yin Dongha was extremely angry. His face was sinister and terrifying. He stared at Su Yun and gritted his teeth. However, I want to see how long you can hide for. With that, the furious Yin Dongha danced with his sword again. Whiz! The edge of the sword whistled like a running cheetah. Su Yun continued to jump backwards, dodging the attack without any mishaps. His face was gloomy, his eyes focused on the slender sword. Yin Dongha was no longer in his eyes. He no longer cared about his words, and only focused on dodging. Slash, stab, slash, slash. No matter how Yin Dongha attacked Su Yun, he would always be able to dodge it. Everyone only saw Yin Dongha brandishing his sword crazily. The sword was so fast that it could no longer be seen. The sword chi was like a crescent moon, flying towards the Black Hawk cult members behind him. There was no one there, only a few Black Hawk cult members who did not have time to dodge. Damn it, damn it, damn it, damn it. The more Yin Dongha slashed, the faster he slashed, the faster he slashed, as though he had already gone mad from Su Yun's constant dodging. The speed of the sword's shadow suddenly doubled, and the surface of his skin began to emit waves of red light. Terrifying threads of blood seeped out from his skin, looking extremely frightening. Was this a profound skill or a magic treasure? No one knew, but everyone understood that Yin Dongha must have used something. His aura suddenly became berserk, and his aura became abnormally ferocious. It was much stronger than before. Su Yun, who was dodging quickly, seemed to be forced into a state of helplessness by the crazy sword. His dodging movements also became more and more dangerous, his body often almost touching the sword, and his face became paler and paler, perspiring profusely, and his breathing became hurried. Yin Dongha caught sight of Su Yun's powerlessness, and his eyes revealed a look of joy. He slashed down 7 times in a row, directly forcing Su Yun to panic, and there was nowhere to hide. Su Yun's expression became more and more flustered, and his footsteps also became messy. Just as he made an extremely complicated movement to dodge Yin Dongha's ferocious sword, the sword actually turned around and slashed towards him again. At that moment, Su Yun had not even straightened his body. It was impossible for a person to dodge so quickly at this time. In the end, you still lost to me. Yin Dongha shouted in joy. The sword in his hand released an indescribably shocking aura. This aura seemed to be able to pierce through the entire heavens. Die! With a ruthless roar, the thin sword attacked. No one would be able to contend against this sword. The expressions of the surrounding people all changed. This is bad. Bu Ming's expression changed drastically. The old sect leader's eyes narrowed and his footsteps loosened, as if he was planning to do something. Lord Sword Envoy, don't. The black-clothed woman was so scared that her beautiful face paled, and she cried out involuntarily. What she wanted was to win this battle, not to take Su Yun's life. Once she killed Su Yun, the Black Hawk cult would probably be in endless trouble, and in that case, the Black Hawk cult would not be the biggest winner. The victor had been decided. Chapter 580. Perhaps even the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect would find it difficult to block Yin Dongha's full-powered attack. At this moment, Yin Dongha had already poured all of the profound qi in his body into the sword in his hand. Its strength and speed had already surpassed the knowledge of ordinary spirit cultivator. If one were to look at it from the perspective of a first-stage Sky Spirit Master cultivator, one would definitely not be able to react to this sword strike, let alone block it. However, just when everyone thought that Su Yun's body was going to explode from the sword strike and his soul was going to scatter, a circle of gray light surrounded Su Yun's body without any warning. Clang! It was as if the Buddha mountain had been shaken, and the sound spread throughout the entire Lotus Star Sword sect. Everyone's eyes were wide open as they looked at the place where the sound came from. Yin Dongha's sword smashed over, striking the gray light screen, causing the light screen to cave in. The sword brought the light screen and pierced into Su Yun's chest, causing his chest to crack open, his skin to split open, and blood to flow out. However, the light screen was still undamaged and continued to block the sword. When the sword shattered Su Yun's chest along with the light screen, it had already reached its limit and could no longer advance any further. This is impossible. When Yin Dongha saw that the barrier had not been broken through, his heart almost stopped beating. But in the next second, a pitch-black sword suddenly pierced through his chest, and in that instant, it fiercely cut open his chest, all the way from his right shoulder. Yin Dongha's entire body was sliced diagonally. Fresh blood gushed out crazily. The main chi meridian in his body was completely shattered. The spirit core was exposed. The profound chi flew everywhere. He trembled a few times, then fell to the ground, twitching crazily. Hua! The sudden change caused everyone to be dumbstruck. How could this be? The black-dressed lady stared at Su Yun and muttered. Su Yun's left hand was holding onto a slender flag. His right hand was holding onto the strange pitch-black sword. His eyes were blood-red. He stared straight at Yin Dongha, who was in front of him. Blood was still flowing from the corner of his mouth. But the current him did not care. His face no longer had the panic and powerlessness from before. The current him was filled with hostility, and he would not give up until he reached his goal. Yin Dongha had completely lost his fighting strength. Both of his arms were crippled. Even if he was not dead, it was already impossible for him to stand up and fight with Su Yun. He tried his best to breathe, and the sword in his right hand gently slipped from his fingertips. With a pale face, he looked at Su Yun, who was walking over. Could it be Imperial equipment? He gasped for breath. Su Yun's sword seemed to have even injured his respiratory tract. That's right. Su Yun nodded. Such a powerful defensive Imperial equipment. Why didn't you use it from the start? Yin Dongha asked loudly. Blood had already dyed the ground beneath him red. If I had used it from the start, I would have made you cautious. Why would you attack me so recklessly? How could I have the chance to retaliate? Su Yun said indifferently. A reckless attack. Counterattack. Yin Dongha's eyes suddenly widened. He seemed to have thought of something and looked at Su Yun in shock. Could it be everything you did just now was fake? The fear and panic you displayed, was it all fake? Thinking about Su Yun's previous expression, and then looking at his current expression, the change was so big, so strange. How could he not be suspicious? Of course, Su Yun did not hide anything, and said indifferently, Your speed is indeed very fast, faster than any spirit cultivator I have ever seen. If I am not completely focused, I am afraid it will be difficult for me to keep up with your speed, but your speed is not fast enough to dazzle me. It is not a problem for me to dodge, but just dodging is not enough. I still need to anger you, consume your profound strength, make you give up on defending, and attack me with all your might. Only then will I have the chance to defeat you. The situation is very smooth. Every time I dodge without any danger, I successfully angered you, and this time you did not defend at all, and used all your strength to attack me. When the terrifying chi on the sword spread out, I knew that as long as I received this attack, I would have the chance to counterattack, and the outcome would be decided, so it would be best for the Imperial equipment to attack at this time. Hearing that, Yin Dongha's angry eyes immediately dimmed down. So it turned out that the entire battle was within Su Yun's calculations. This was probably the so-called defensive counterattack. He didn't lose in terms of cultivation, but in terms of intelligence. From the looks of it, Yin Dongha was quite wronged. Why do you believe that you can anger me? After an unknown period of time, Yin Dongha asked his last question. Because you already know that my cultivation is lower than yours. Su Yun said indifferently. From the moment you entered the arena, the disdain and arrogance in your eyes already told me that even though I am wearing a shielding magic treasure, it does not seem to have any effect on you, and it is precisely because I know this that I am certain of this idea. First, I will show the enemy that I am weak, and then wait for an opportunity to counterattack. Hearing that, Yin Dongha's eyes opened wide, and he was unable to speak for a long time. Finally, he seemed to have understood something and laughed out loud. Ha! Ha! I never thought that Yin Dongha, would actually be like an idiot being toyed with by a fellow whose cultivation is 4 stages lower than mine. How laughable! How laughable! Ha! Desolate laughter resounded in all directions. Yin Dongha is actually so useless to be defeated by a person who has just entered the Sky Spirit Master. If this were to spread, where would my Black Hawk cult's face go? Damn it! This trash! The black-clothed woman was already extremely angry. Her pretty face alternated between green and purple. She could not believe what she had just seen. As for the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect, they looked at the 2 people in the center as if they were petrified. Looking at Su Yun, who was standing in front of Yin Dongha, every single face of the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect was filled with disbelief. Their mouths opened as if they could swallow an egg as they stared blankly. Is this true? Bu Ming was still in trance as he looked at Su Yun in shock. As for the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect, he could not help but nod his head. His eyes shone with a bright light as he pursed his lips, but no one knew what he was saying. The scene was silent for about 3 seconds, and then a tsunami of cheers erupted from the Lotus Star Sword sect. We won! Heart-wrenching shouts shook the sky, and tears of excitement flowed out from some people's eyes. This result was simply unbelievable. Many people thought that the higher the cultivation of the spirit cultivator, the less feelings they had. In reality, it was not that their feelings had changed, but that they had experienced too many things, and their emotions were no longer so easily revealed. Today was different. The life and death of the sect was at stake. Many people thought that the Lotus Star Sword sect would not be able to escape today, but no one expected that in this critical moment of life and death, a person like Su Yun would suddenly appear. Everyone cheered and hugged each other excitedly. Some of the new disciples even knelt on the ground and cried out loud, "Protector Qing, you can rest in peace." Wails and shouts interweaved together. According to the rules of the mountain, after a sect was challenged, it could not be challenged by other sect for 10 years. This was a rule set by the big sects and all the small sections. Although the big sects were powerful, they were often worried that there would be too many ants biting an elephant to death, so they set up such a buffer period. If anyone violated the rules of the mountain, they would be surrounded and attacked by all the sect below the Linglong Mountain without mercy. Su Yun glanced at the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect, then turned his head and stared at Yin Dongha, who was struggling on the ground, and asked, "What's your decision, to die or to give up?" I gave up. Without waiting for Yin Dongha to speak, the black-clothed lady shouted out helplessly. Hearing that, Yin Dongha clenched his teeth and said, "I will abide by the contract and give up." As the sound of his voice faded, the array seal released light, and a light sword that represented Yin Dongha that was inserted into the array seal immediately disappeared. However, the array seal did not disappear, but an incomparably huge golden longsword appeared, representing determination. After the golden sword appeared, it immediately flew into the air and exploded. Like fireworks, it flew in all directions and spread throughout the entire Linglong Mountain. This was a communication, informing everyone in the Linglong Mountain of the results of the battle at the Lotus Star Sword sect. Seeing the signs in the air, The people of the Black Hawk cult were all indignant and unwilling, but since things had already come to this, they had no other way to deal with it. Even the strongest sword envoy had lost, so no one could fight, at least no one could fight against the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect. "Carry this trash away," the woman in black shouted at the people beside her, then snorted and walked out of the mountain gate. "If the people of the Black Hawk cult come to challenge us again, please call your sect leader over." Buming laughed and shouted. As the sound of his voice faded, the entire hall burst into laughter. The black-clothed woman turned her head and glared at the crowd, gritting her teeth and saying, "Don't be complacent too early." With that, he quickened his pace. The people of the Black Hawk cult left in a scattered manner, leaving behind only broken corpses and messy roof tiles. Of course, there was also a group of excited people. After hugging each other for a while, Buming said to the disciple beside him, "Hurry up and send someone to clean it up. Also, count the casualties." With that, he walked in front of the old sect leader, cupped his fists, and said, "Sect leader, after this battle, our sect's vitality has been greatly damaged, and I'm afraid it will be difficult for us to recover in a short period of time. We should conserve our energy and think of a way to expand the sect. Otherwise, 10 years later, I'm afraid there will be people who will come and steal our sect's treasure. Don't be in such a hurry to talk about this right now. Go and arrange for Protector Ching and the others. Also, give the order to gather everyone in our sect at the Lotus Star Hall. I have something important to announce." With that, the old sect leader turned around and walked into the sect. Buming was confused, but he did not ask any questions. He cupped his fists and replied, then cupped his fists towards Su Yun, who was walking over, and quickly left. "All right, Su Yun, follow them to the Lotus Star Hall." At this time, the old sect leader who had not gone far turned around and said to Su Yun, "What's the matter?" Su Yun was startled. The old sect leader did not say anything and left. Su Yun was confused, but at this time, the disciples of the Lotus Star Sword sect swarmed over, lifted him up, and walked towards the Lotus Star Sword sect. Cheers and laughter rang out incessantly, and only one name echoed throughout the entire sect. Su Yun. Chapter 581. Su Yun was carried into the Lotus Star Hall by the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect. He was surrounded by an excited crowd. Although it was the first time everyone had met Su Yun, they all saw him as their idol. In fact, regardless of gender, they all worshipped heroes the same. And at that moment, he was a hero. "Lord Su Yun, you were too powerful just now. That sword envoy or whatever, you actually dared to boast shamelessly. You must have suffered this time, right?" "Hee. Master Su Yun, what sect did you come from with your cultivation? When did the Imperial Sword Technique allow you to control so many flying swords? This is the first time I've seen it. All of you, stop making a ruckus. Big Brother Su Yun has just experienced a great battle and is still injured. Quickly put him down and let him rest first." "Yo, Ching He, Lord Su Yun is an important person in the Realm Tree. How can you casually call him Big Brother? And you call me so intimately. What? Could it be that you have taken a fancy to Lord Su Yun?" No, don't spout nonsense. It's just that Big Brother Su Yun has already entered our Lotus Star Sword sect. Logically speaking, he should be my junior brother, but he is an important minister of the Realm Lord, so I can naturally call him Big Brother. But when Lord Su Yun enters my Lotus Star Sword sect, he is also a protector. You're only an inner sect leader, so you can't call him that. At the very least, you should call him Protector Su. You guys, I'm not going to talk to you guys anymore." "Ha!" Everyone laughed. Seeing that, Su Yun felt helpless. He waved his hands and said, "You guys can just call me Su Yun. There's no need to address me so much. I can't take it. In fact, many of you here have cultivation levels above mine. How is this possible?" One of them said in shock, "You're someone who can fight with the 4th stage of the Sky Spirit Master. The highest cultivation level we have here is only at the 2nd stage of the Sky Spirit Master." Su Yun laughed. He was too lazy to explain. The group of people noisily walked through the corridor, crossed an empty field, and finally entered the magnificent and majestic palace at the end of the field. As they approached the palace, the noisy crowd immediately quietened down. Everyone put Su Yun down and automatically lined up and walked into the palace one by one. Seeing that, Su Yun thought, maybe the Lotus Star Palace was an extremely sacred place in the sect. He strode forward and followed the crowd, but he had only taken 2 steps when he felt a sharp pain in his chest. He lifted up the lapel of his robe and glanced at it. He saw that the skin and flesh there had all split open, and his entire chest was sunken inwards. It was extremely uncomfortable. Although he had dodged Yin Dongha's sword, it was hard to avoid his terrifying, profound chi. Su Yun secretly clenched his teeth, endured the pain, and walked inside. At this moment, in the Great Hall, the higher-ups of the Lotus Star Sword sect, led by Bu Ming, had all arrived. The ordinary disciples of the Lotus Star Sword sect were waiting outside the hall, and inside the hall were the disciples of the inner sect and above. Even so, there were close to 1,000 people densely packed here, and it was said that there was still a large number of people from the Lotus Star Sword sect rushing over. Because the sect leader's order was too sudden, many people did not have the time to come over. When Su Yun stepped into the hall, almost all eyes turned towards him. Their eyes were filled with reverence, respect, and admiration. To be able to save him as an outsider in a critical moment, not to mention anything else, his character and courage had already convinced everyone present. Greetings, Protector Su. When Su Yun approached an inner sect guard who was standing at the door, he immediately cupped his fists and bowed, and greeted respectfully. Hearing that, the others immediately cupped their fists and bowed toward Su Yun. Greetings, Protector Su. Greetings, Protector Su. Greetings, Protector Su. The Great Hall was filled with tsunami-like voices, like waves, wave after wave. Seeing that, Su Yun's footsteps paused. He looked at everyone seriously, then nodded his head, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. Protector? He actually had no intention of taking this position. Perhaps, after the sect leader finished speaking, he would have to continue searching for his parents. He wouldn't be able to stay in the Lotus Star Sword sect for long. People entered the palace one after another, but not long after, an old figure accompanied by 2 disciples walked into the palace. This person was the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect. Greetings, sect leader. The shouts rang out again. Don't be too polite. The old sect leader looked at everyone and said, Thank you, sect leader. People stood up. The old sect leader walked to the top of the palace. His dim yellow eyes stared at everyone present. And finally, his gaze landed on Su Yun, and after a few seconds, he moved his eyes away, and his bark-like lips started to move. Today's calamity has passed. My Lotus Star Sword sect will not be destroyed and will definitely be reborn like a Nirvana phoenix. However, all of you cannot slack off. In the future, you must work harder and comprehend more. You must not be lazy and enjoy yourself. Do you understand? Disciple understands. Everyone shouted. Bu Ming is fully in charge of the reconstruction of the sect. Bu Ming obeys. Bu Ming cupped his fists and said. He looked at the old sect leader and asked, Then, sect leader, what about the recruitment? What expansion? The sect is expanding. Bu Ming said, Our Lotus Star Sword sect is not inferior to the Black Hawk cult, but we have too few people. If we expand the sect and recruit talents, we will definitely be able to increase the strength of our sect. At that time, if the Black Hawk cult comes to provoke us again, we will not have to be afraid of them. Bu Ming spoke anxiously. However, at the moment, many people had the same thought. The old sect leader looked at Bu Ming quietly, thought for a while, then shook his head. No need. I have never planned to expand. Sect leader, although the Lotus Star Sword sect also has its glorious moments, resounding throughout the entire continent. But that is not the original intention of our sect's ancestor. The meaning of a sect's existence is not to fight for hegemony over the world, to control the world, but to teach. We are a sect, not a sect. The Lotus Star Sword sect is not the Black Hawk cult. Anyone who wants to enter my Lotus Star Sword sect can. They can enter at any time, but I will not deliberately beg for it. Nor do I wish for you to deliberately beg for it. Nor do I wish for you to use the people you recruit as a sword. If that is the case, then people will not be people, but a type of martial power. So how can you live up to the name Lotus Star? Spirit cultivation, spirit cultivation. Cultivation is the Tao. If not the Tao, then it will distort the original intention and will never be able to reach a higher realm. The old sect leader said slowly. With that said, Buming opened his mouth, but did not know what to say. The reason why I've gathered everyone here today is actually because I have something important to announce. The old sect leader said seriously, then waved to the disciple who entered the hall with him. The disciple immediately walked over and handed the treasure box to the old sect leader. Everyone looked at the treasure box. It was actually the treasure box that contained the Lotus Star sword. What was this for? Everyone looked at each other, unable to understand what was going on. Buming looked at the box strangely, his heart filled with doubt. Could it be that the matter that was going to be announced today was related to the Lotus Star sword? Everyone had the same thought in their minds. The sect leader took the box, opened it, and took out the Lotus Star sword inside. When the pure white lotus, slender and smooth sword was taken out from the box, everyone's eyes were attracted to the slender and beautiful treasured sword. Even Su Yun was no exception. This sword did not have any sharp aura. At first glance, it gave off a very gentle feeling. It was like a piece of pure white paper, without the slightest bit of dirt. The sword's body glowed with a bright light. It was exceptionally beautiful. In the middle of the sword's body, there was a lotus pattern, and a tranquil aura floated out from the sword's body. What kind of mystical aura was this? In front of this sword, it was as if all of the ruthlessness, cruelty, and coldness had turned into smoke. All of the blazing battle intent and hot blood had to calm down. Is this our sect's most valuable treasure, the Lotus Star sword? It is indeed extraordinary. Although I haven't touched it, that aura is already shocking. Didn't you say that our sect's most valuable treasure, the Lotus Star sword, was damaged? Why do I see that the sword is not damaged at all? Has this sword really been destroyed? It is indeed a broken sword. What you see is just an appearance. Bu Ming said, "Does everyone see the lotus flower seal in the middle of the Lotus Star sword body?" In fact, it was a colorful lotus flower seal, but right now there were only lines left. It was because the Lotus Star sword had suffered an attack, causing all of the energy in the lotus flower seal to be destroyed, causing its power to drop greatly. The current Lotus Star sword's power is probably not even half of what it used to be. It's actually like this. Everyone was shocked and sighed. However, at this moment, everyone was curious. Why did the old sect leader take out the Lotus Star sword at this time? Silence. At this moment, the old sect leader shouted in a low voice. Everyone in the palace immediately shut their mouths, not daring to say a word. The old sect leader had a solemn expression. His expression was extremely serious. He looked forward, took a deep breath, and then slowly opened his mouth, his voice heavy. "Please, Protector Su Yun, come up and receive the sword." What? As soon as he said that, the entire audience was shocked. Su Yun was even more baffled. He looked at the old sect leader in astonishment. The old sect leader spoke out in a clear voice. "Today, with my status as the 93rd generation sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect, I will specially pass on my sect's most precious Lotus Star sword to my disciple, Su Yun, and teach him the sword technique, Lotus Star sword art. I hope that he will bring glory to our sect's absolute art, and bring glory to our sect's teachings. Protector Su Yun, please receive the sword." The old sect leader looked at Su Yun and said seriously, his old hands holding onto the Lotus Star sword firmly, extended towards him. Su Yun felt his mind go blank. He could not understand why things would turn out like this. Lotus Star sword art? Lotus Star sword art? These are all the absolute arts of the Lotus Star sword sect. They should have been under the control of the sect leader. Why would they be passed down to me? Could it be that the old sect leader wants to pass down the position of sect leader to me? Su Yun thought, but very quickly he denied that thought. The old sect leader knew that he was someone who was going to leave. Since he would not stay in the Lotus Star sword sect, how could he dare to carelessly pass down the position of sect leader? Wasn't he going to bury the Lotus Star sword sect? Su Yun's heart was at a loss. Looking at the sword, his eyes flashed with passion. Chapter 582. As someone who loves swords, this precious treasure was naturally something that he yearned for even in his dreams. Although it was currently a broken sword, no one could deny its might. Sect Master, why did you pass the sect's treasure to me? Su Yun was not in a hurry to receive the sword, but looked at the old sect leader seriously and asked, compared to the Lotus Star Sword sect, I think this sword is more suitable for you. The old sect master said, why do you say that? Do you know what a sword is used for? Murder? No, it's to protect. The old sect master shook his head. Then why not leave it in the Lotus Star Sword sect and use it to protect the sect? Guarding is not the responsibility of the sword, but the responsibility of the sword user. Only by using it can we achieve the goal of guarding. And now, this Lotus Star Sword has brought us more danger than guarding, so I plan to pass it to you, or rather, let you bring it away from the Lotus Star Sword sect. The old sect leader said. Hearing that, Su Yun was startled. After thinking for a moment, he seemed to have vaguely understood the old sect master's intentions. Today's calamity was caused by the Lotus Star Sword. In fact, not only today, in the past, when my sword sect encountered a calamity, it was also because of this sword. Back then, the second-generation sect leader brought this sword to roam the 4 seas, sweeping through the 8 wastelands, defeating all the heroes in the world, and defeating all the supreme expert in the world. Everyone thought that it was the work of the Lotus Star Sword, but in reality, no matter which supreme expert it is definitely not just his magic tool that is strong. Otherwise, why is my Lotus Star Sword sect still at such a scale after so many years? The old sect leader's expression revealed an unconcealable vicissitude, and said, after today, I have already gained enlightenment, and continue to guard this Lotus Star Sword. It will be better to pass it to someone who needs it, and you, Su Yun, compared to me, you will definitely need this sword more. So today, in front of all the disciples, I will pass this sword to you. I hope you will not refuse. Hearing that, Su Yun did not speak for a long time. The old sect leader took a step forward, both hands holding onto the treasure sword. He looked at Su Yun and slowly spoke. The sword is right here. It's fine if you don't want to accept it. It's all up to fate. With that, he stood there quietly, as if waiting for Su Yun's decision. Su Yun looked at the spotless white sword. He did not know why, but he was strangely calm. He did not immediately accept the sword, nor did he immediately reject it. But after waiting for about 3 breaths, he still reached out and grabbed the hilt of the sword. I am willing to accept this Lotus Star Sword, he said seriously. The hierarch nodded in satisfaction, and a smile finally appeared on his face. The followers below were completely confused. The higher-ups of the Lotus Star Sword sect, led by Bu Ming, were even more restless. Finally, a deacon could not help but speak up. Sect leader, what did you mean by your words just now? Let Protector Su bring the sword away from the Lotus Star Sword sect? Could it be that you wish for this sword? Not bad. The old sect leader nodded his head and said indifferently, the reason Protector Su joined our sect is to repel the enemy. You all know his purpose in coming to the Linglong Mountain. He cannot stay in the sect for long. He will naturally leave in the future. Since that's the case, why did you pass this sword to Master Su Yun? Is it because he saved our sect? If that's what I mean, would you feel that it's inappropriate? The old sect master asked. When everyone heard this, they were speechless. In fact, just based on Su Yun's contributions, it was indeed reasonable to accept the sword. After all, without Su Yun, the sword and the sword technique would have long belonged to the Blackhawk sect. Why would it be here? However, if the Lotus Star Sword sect did not have these treasures, wouldn't this sect only exist in name? Everyone knew that the sect protecting treasure of the Lotus Star Sword sect was the Lotus Star Sword and its sword techniques. And this was also what the Lotus Star Sword sect relied on to stand tall in the Linglong Mountain. Without these 2 items, how would the Lotus Star Sword sect establish itself in the future? However, the old sect leader spoke again to reassure everyone. Whether the Lotus Star Sword exists in the Lotus Star Sword sect or not, that is not important. What is important is that all of us have the teachings of the Lotus Star in our hearts, and never forget the teachings of the Lotus Star at all times. That is enough. After so many years, we have not been able to bring the Lotus Star Sword to greater heights. Why not give it to someone who is fated? Furthermore, I believe that even if Protector Su Yun leaves the sect, he will never forget the Lotus Star Sword sect. The old sect leader said in a sincere tone. Although this was his reasoning, it was very pertinent. After some people heard this, the dissatisfaction in their hearts lessened by a lot. There was only one sword, so what did it matter if it was in the sect or not? Furthermore, if the Lotus Star Sword was in the sect, it would only bring more disasters to the Lotus Star Sword sect, causing the sect to never be able to be at peace. The development of a sect would never rely on a magic treasure. The old sect leader looked at everyone present seriously. When some people's faces were filled with reluctance and sadness, his face would reveal helplessness and disappointment. When some people's faces were extremely calm and indifferent, his face would reveal a gratified smile. When Su Yin saw the change in the old sect leader's face, he immediately understood. So it turned out that the reason why the old sect leader taught him this sword was not only because the Lotus Star Sword sect was unable to promote this sword, but also because it was used as a medium to test the mental state of every sword sect member. All right, I still have something to discuss with Su Yun alone. If you all have nothing else to say, you can all leave. The old sect leader waved his hand and said, "Disciple will take his leave." Everyone called out in unison as they slowly left the Lotus Star Hall. When the last person left the Lotus Star Hall, only Su Yun and the old sect leader were left in the palace. The hall was extremely quiet. Su Yun looked at the old sect leader, not knowing what else he wanted to do. Are you thinking that the Lotus Star Sword has brought so many disasters to my Lotus Star Sword sect? If I pass it to you now, it will only bring you disaster, right? At this time, the old sect leader spoke. I didn't think so, Su Yun said. Oh, why? If that's the case, you can just give it to the Black Hawk cult. There's no need to guard these two items to the death. That's right. The old sect leader nodded his head and said indifferently, in fact, I already knew why the Black Hawk cult leader wanted these two items. He paced back and forth in the hall a few times and slowly said, a few years ago, I received news that the Black Hawk cult leader had somehow found the remaining scrolls of my Lotus Star Sword art. Later on, I found out that his scrolls were made for my sect. Mole! Hearing that, Su Yun's eyes widened. Could it be that my sect's Lotus Star Sword art is not incomplete? Back when it was in the hands of the previous sect leader, the missing part of the Lotus Star Sword art had already been recovered. It was just that in order to prevent others from spying on it, I did not reveal this news. The old sect leader shook his head and sighed. The current spirit cultivator has long lost the essence that a cultivator should have. They have stepped onto the path of cultivation, and their goal is only for the sake of martial power, not to pursue the unity of nature and the unity of man and nature. They have bitterly cultivated for the sake of power, for the sake of greed, and there are many such people in my Lotus Star Sword sect, so I did not say it out loud. Not only did I not announce this news, I even wanted to send the Lotus Star Sword out of the sect. Hearing that, Su Yun was startled, then laughed bitterly and shook his head. If that's the case, then sect leader, you have entrusted the wrong person. In fact, my original intention of cultivating was only for revenge, for martial power, and is not much different from those spirit cultivators. No, there's a difference. Without waiting for Su Yun to finish speaking, the old sect leader interrupted him. Su Yun was startled. However, the old sect leader did not explain, and slowly opened his mouth. The Black Hawk cult leader obtained an unknown piece of outer sky black iron. This black iron is a top-quality material. It can be used to forge divine weapons. The Black Hawk cult leader named it the Black Hawk Black Iron, with the intention of using it to repair the Lotus Star Sword. And with the Lotus Star Sword art, he would be able to repeat the glory of the current second-generation sect leader. But his thoughts were too simple. With just these two items, he would not be able to reach that level. And even if the second-generation sect leader was still alive, it would still be impossible for him to reach that level. Su Yun, I know that you're anxious to find your parents, but please wait a few days. During this time, I will teach you all of the Lotus Star Sword art, and also I will tell you the method to repair the Lotus Star Sword as well. What? Su Yun was shocked. Repair the Lotus Star Sword art? Obtain the complete inheritance of the Lotus Star Sword art? Why is that? Su Yun was completely confused. He could not guess what the old sect leader was thinking at all. Even if he had stopped the Black Hawk cult's plan, there was no need to do this, right? These two were the representatives of the Lotus Star Sword sect. However, the old sect leader did not give any explanation. He only took out a white book from his bosom and handed it over to Su Yun. The book was not some peerless secret manual, but something that everyone in the Lotus Star Sword sect had. Lotus Star's teachings. This was something that everyone had to read after joining the Lotus Star Sword sect. You have inherited the essence of the sword and are a qualified swordsman, so I will pass these two items down to you. You know better than me that the sword is used to protect, not to kill, so you can use these two items well. I only hope that after you leave the sect, you can inherit the teachings of the Lotus Star and never forget the teachings. If that's the case, I will be satisfied. The old sect leader did not say any beautiful or profound words. He only spoke his thoughts in a simple and plain manner. Su Yun listened to it in a daze, but after listening to it, his heart surged with waves that were difficult to calm down. Looking at the white book, he stood there quietly for a long time. In the end, he extended his hand and received the teachings. Seeing that the old sect leader was comforted, he patted Su Yun's shoulder and then walked out of the hall. The Lotus Star Sword art is extremely special. There are only 3 moves, and learning it all depends on one's comprehension. If it is fast, it will take 3 months. If it is slow, it will take forever. The people in the sect will only be able to learn the first move, and no one in the sect will know that there's a 3rd move. Su Yun, I will pass the Lotus Star Sword art to you now. Follow me. Yes, sect leader. Su Yun nodded. He looked at the Lotus Star Sword in his hand, turned, and walked out of the hall with the sword in his hand. Chapter 583. On the way to the Black Hawk cult, the black-clothed woman led the Black Hawk cult disciples into the sect with a cold expression. Yin Dongha was supported by the profound qi. He laid on the qi bed condensed from the profound qi, his eyes staring blankly at the sky. The wounds on his body had already been treated, but the injuries to the qi meridian and spirit core could not be healed in a short period of time. Have you thought about how you're going to explain this to the sect leader later? The black-clothed woman turned her head and stared at Yin Dongha with a cold face, and said in a deep voice. Yin Dongha bit his lower lip, but did not say anything in the end. I had originally thought that after you obtained a fortuitous encounter, your cultivation would definitely increase greatly, and it would be extremely easy for you to deal with the trash from the Lotus Star Sword sect. Even the sect leader took care of that old fellow from the Lotus Star Sword sect for you. I never thought that you would actually lose to a nameless nobody. I think that after today, you, Yin Dongha, will not have the face to stay in the Linglong Mountain. Seeing that Yin Dongha did not speak, the black-clothed woman continued to mock and ridicule. Hearing that, a trace of anger flashed past Yin Dongha's lifeless eyes, and he said angrily, Li Wu, don't go too far. That person is the Realm Lord's man. How could I dare to be ruthless? If we really do anything to him, it will only implicate our entire Black Hawk cult. Do you understand? Furthermore, the sect leader asked me to help you seize these 2 treasures, but he did not tell me that the Realm Lord's people are in the Lotus Star Sword sect. Your information is wrong, and now you still want to push all the blame onto me? I don't believe that you can live in peace. Yin Dongha, don't use that kind of arrogant tone to talk to me. Right now, 3 of your main Qi Meridian have already been injured, and your cultivation has dropped greatly. Right now, you don't even know if you can maintain your Sky Spirit Master cultivation. Do you think the sect leader will still value you? The black-clothed woman snorted. Hearing that, Yin Dongha's face changed. He wanted to say something, but it seemed to have affected his wound. He coughed violently a few times and spat out a mouthful of blood. A piece of trash. The black-clothed woman muttered to herself. She was too lazy to continue talking to Yin Dongha and continued to rush forward. Although flying was not allowed in the Linglong Mountain, everyone was flying close to the ground, and their speed was not slow. Very quickly, the black-clothed woman, Yin Dongha, and the rest arrived at the foot of the mountain where the Black Hawk cult was located. At this moment, thick smoke billowed on the mountain, and a large amount of violent Xian qi floated down from the mountain. When the black-robed woman sensed this aura, her expression immediately froze. What's going on? Lord Lee, something doesn't seem right. One of the Black Hawk cult members in front turned his head and said, "The two of you, quickly go up the mountain and check out the situation," the black-clothed woman said in a low voice. Yes. The two of them cupped their fists and said, then increased their speed and rushed up the mountain. However, before the two of them could go far, they saw a few disciples of the Black Hawk Hall rushing down the road. These people looked flustered, their bodies covered in blood and wounds, all of them rolling and crawling down, looking extremely miserable. Ah, it's Lord Li Wu and Lord Sword Envoy. When these followers saw the black-robed woman and the others, it was as if they had seen their saviors. One by one, they madly rushed over. What the hell happened? The black-robed lady grabbed one of them and asked anxiously. Destroyed, destroyed, completely destroyed. That follower's voice trembled as he cried out. Destroy what? The black-clothed woman unceremoniously slapped that person twice and shouted sternly, "Speak properly." That person covered his face with his hands, looking aggrieved. Just as he was about to speak, the other person beat him to it and screamed hysterically. Lord Li Wu, the Black Hawk cult has been destroyed. The sect leader has died tragically. All the elites of the sect have died in battle. The Black Hawk cult has been completely destroyed. What? The black-clothed woman and the others were petrified, all of them completely shocked. There's a huge dragon on the mountain. This dragon's entire body is on fire. It's so powerful. It opened its mouth and burned the entire Black Hawk Hall. No one could stand in front of it for a single breath. It ate everyone. All of them were eaten. The people in the sect either died or fled. Lord Li Wu, hurry up and escape. If we are discovered by that dragon, we will all be finished. After saying that, the group of followers ignored the black-clothed woman and the others and ran forward with all their might. The black-clothed woman's expression changed, and her mind was in a mess. How could she have thought that such a huge Black Hawk cult would disappear just like that? Could it be that the sect leader had offended some supreme expert? The black-clothed woman pondered. Roar! At this moment, an angry roar that shook the heavens spread throughout the entire mountain. The black-clothed woman and the others' expressions all changed. Li Wu, what are you still standing there for? If you don't want to die, then hurry up and run. Yin Donghe, who was on the gas bed, shouted at the black-clothed woman. The black-clothed woman was stunned for a moment before she regained her senses and said anxiously, "Let's go. Let's leave this place." Yes, yes. Everyone nodded and immediately turned to leave. However, at this moment, the mountain top suddenly trembled, and then with a bang, the entire mountain top exploded. A huge, fiery red divine dragon leaped out of the mountain top and went straight into the clouds. It hovered above the 9 heavens, looking down at all the living beings below. The blazing temperature dyed countless white clouds red, and the flames that overflowed from its body seemed to burn the sky. What kind of majestic and divine dragon was this? When the black-clothed woman and the others saw such a huge spirit beast, their bodies trembled violently. The aura released by the divine dragon had completely shattered the last line of defense in their hearts. If not for their survival instincts, they would have already knelt on the ground and kowtowed to it. Poochie! At this moment, the sound of flesh being cut came from behind the black-clothed woman. Her hair stood on end as her entire body trembled in shock. She immediately turned around to see a man dressed in fiery red clothes and holding a blood-red thin sword standing behind them. Beside him were a few cold, headless corpses. These corpses were the Black Hawk cult members who had escaped from the mountain. "Run! Did I allow you to run?" The man snorted. He turned around and looked at the black-clothed woman and the others with disgust. He asked, "Hey, are you guys from the Black Hawk cult?" We? The black-clothed woman was stunned for a moment before she hurriedly smiled and said, "No. Of course not, no." "Then forget it." The man snorted and was about to leave. Suddenly, from the corner of his eyes, he saw the medallions hanging on everyone's waists. Suspicious, he turned his head to look at the medallions hanging on the waists of the corpses, and his face immediately darkened. "Damn it, you are clearly from the Black Hawk cult. yet you still dare to lie to me." He roared angrily. With that, he directly swung his sword towards Yin Donghe, who was lying on the bed of qi. Yin Donghe almost didn't have time to defend. His body was cut into two halves. The thin sword released a scorching heat, directly burning all the blood in his body. Yin Donghe died a horrible death. When the other members of the Black Hawk cult saw this, they were scared out of their wits. But at this moment, the black-clothed woman roared, "Everyone, don't be afraid. He's only one person. We have nearly 100 people here. Are we still afraid of him? Let's attack together and kill him." With this encouragement, the terrified people came back to their senses. That's right, there were so many of them. What was there to be afraid of? With that, everyone pounced forward like a swarm of bees. "Your Black Hawk cult is starting to bully us again. Damn it, damn it. Since that's the case, don't blame me for being ruthless." The man roared angrily. His eyes were blood red, as if he was extremely annoyed by the actions of these people. His sword attacks became even more ferocious. His sword was so fast that there was no shadow, and it was exceptionally sharp. No matter whose weapon touched his sword, it would be split into two. In a short while, more than half of the Black Hawk cult members were injured, and they were completely beaten into a pile of loose sand. The black-clothed woman was about to go up and support him, but seeing how fierce the other party was, how could she dare to participate in the battle? He quickly turned around and was about to escape. But just as she turned around, a ferocious fire dragon flew towards her. Suyin stood quietly in front of a flat, white expanse of land. The ground here was extremely mystical. It was clearly paved with white jade, but there were lotus flowers growing on the floor. There was no soil or water, but the lotus flowers were exceptionally beautiful. In front of the lotus stood an old man. The old man held a long sword in his hand. The tip of the sword pointed at a lotus flower. His eyes were closed as he muttered something. The most important thing about the Lotus Star Sword art is not the sword move, but the mental move. The Lotus Star Sword art only has 3 moves. Strictly speaking, it does not have any ingenuity, but its advantage is that it can be used as it pleases. However, in order to use the Lotus Star Sword art, there must be a prerequisite, and that is to place your own mind in a completely clear state. You must maintain a state of mind that is like a lotus flower in order to unleash the greatest power of the Lotus Star Sword art. As the old sect leader spoke, he began to brandish the sword in his hand. What was surprising was that his sword dance was extremely slow. Every time he moved, his breathing would slow down. The sword in his hand seemed to have been slowed down countless times, causing people to feel impatient. The sword did not have any power, nor did it have any aura, much less injure the enemy. Seeing that, Su Yun frowned. "Sect leader, how can such a sword hurt people? Don't hurt others as your goal, just protect them." The sect leader said slowly as he continued to move, "You must believe that this sword will protect you. When danger comes, it will help you defeat your opponent." With that said, the old sect leader's sword tip swayed once in front of Su Yun's eyes. It was still very slow, but from his appearance, he was already hinting to Su Yun to try and attack him. Seeing that, Su Yun asked, "How much strength do you use?" 100%. The old sect leader said without any trace of politeness. Hearing that, Su Yun's eyes congealed. He took a deep breath, activated the profound qi, and his speed exploded. He rushed towards the old sect leader like a whirlwind. At the same time, he pulled out the Lotus Star Sword in his hand and thrust it straight at the old sect leader. This sword strike was dazzling and swift, causing people's eyes to light up. However, just as the tip of the sword was about to touch the old sect leader's body, his slow sword suddenly moved. As if it had been attracted by something, the sword blade moved straight to the location where Su Yun was attacking. Clang! A crisp sound rang out. A gigantic white lotus imprint appeared in front of the old sect leader. Su Yun smashed onto the white lotus imprint, causing his entire body to suffer a backlash. A burst of force struck his body, causing him to fly backwards. Chapter 584. Bang! Su Yun fell into the group of white lotus flowers, coughed violently a few times, and then crawled up in a sorry state. Su Yun, are you all right? The old sect leader put down his sword and asked. I'm fine. Sect leader, don't worry about me. Su Yun said. A look of surprise flashed past his eyes, and he asked anxiously, But, sect leader, what exactly is going on? Why do I feel like I was attacked by my own chi? Furthermore, although I suffered a powerful attack, I did not suffer any injuries. What exactly is going on? Hearing that, a smile appeared on the old sect leader's face, and he chuckled. This is the power of the Lotus Star Sword Art. The attack you suffered just now was the attack I wanted you to suffer. You want me to suffer an attack? Hearing that, Su Yun was confused. What do you mean? This is the meaning of the Lotus Star Sword Art. No moves are better than moves. Do as you please. Do as you please. When your state of mind is as clear as a lotus, you can use the sword technique to unleash the moves you want at any time. For example, that move just now, I only wanted a counterattack, and it had such an effect, the old sect leader said. Hearing that, Su Yun's pupils dilated a few times. So magical? Then isn't this sword technique too heaven-defying? Otherwise, why would this sword technique be so coveted? However, ordinary swords can only unleash the ordinary moves of the Lotus Star Sword Art. For some powerful thoughts, you still need to cooperate with the Lotus Star Sword in order to successfully activate them. Think, this was the first time Su Yun had heard of such a new word. Then if I want the other party to die, can I do it through this sword technique? Su Yun suddenly thought of something and asked. Sure. The old sect leader nodded without hesitation. Hearing that, Su Yun's heart jumped. Is that really possible? It is possible, but ever since the Lotus Star Sword Art and the Lotus Star Sword were created, this kind of thought has only succeeded once. Furthermore, the price paid to realize this thought through the sword technique is extremely heavy. The old sect leader shook his head. Actually, the strength of the thought is closely related to the sword user himself. Causing a person to die is equivalent to defying the heavens and changing fate. This kind of profound technique has destroyed the balance of nature and is not tolerated by the heavens and earth, so the trigger of death can only happen under one circumstance, and that is, the opponent is already severely injured, and you have more than half of the profound chi to rely on. If you do not have these conditions, it is impossible to achieve the thought of death. Is that so? Not only that after you die, one of your main meridians will be damaged. In other words, your cultivation base will drop. As for how much it will drop, it will depend on the degree of damage to your main meridians. In my opinion, don't use it unless you have no other choice, because if you die and fail, there will be serious consequences. I've said it before, there aren't many moves in the Lotus Star Sword Art, but in reality, these so-called 3 moves can be split into 2 moves. One move does not require the Lotus Star Sword, and the other move can only be successfully executed with the help of the Lotus Star Sword. Su Yun, I don't have much to teach you. The rest, you need to work hard on your own. The old sect leader said earnestly. Hearing that, Su Yun nodded his head seriously. Following that, the old sect master continued to slowly dance with his sword. The way he danced with his sword was not done randomly, but with reason. The reason he danced with his sword was not to kill or defend against the enemy, but to mobilize the profound chi in his body and arrange it all over his body, so that he could use it to display his thoughts. Su Yun watched carefully, not daring to be distracted in the slightest. In his experience, all sword techniques only had one goal, and that was to kill the enemy. The limitless sword arts was the same, regardless of whether it was the lower 4 swords, the middle 2 swords, or the absolute sword. They were all aimed at destroying the opponent. Currently, the limitless sword arts that Su Yun had grasped had already reached a bottleneck. He felt that he no longer had any clues, and it was difficult for him to break through his understanding of sword techniques. However, the Lotus Star Sword Art seemed to have opened a new door for him, so it turned out that sword techniques could also be used in this way. In the past few days, Su Yun and the old sect leader had been immersed in the lotus flowers. Every word the old sect leader said would allow him to reap great benefits. Just like the teachings of the Master Subhoodie, it made people reminisce and reap great benefits. After an unknown number of days, just as Su Yun was immersed in his studies and was unable to extricate himself, A shout suddenly came from outside the lotus flowers, breaking the tranquility. Sect leader, I have urgent news to report, sect leader. The voice belonged to Bu Ming. When the old sect leader heard it, he immediately stopped and turned to look, only to see Bu Ming rushing over like a gust of wind, and anxiously bowed towards Su Yun and the old sect leader. "Why are you in such a panic?" the old sect leader asked. Bu Ming's voice trembled as he said anxiously, "I just received news that the entire Black Hawk cult has been destroyed, and a fire dragon that is comparable to a divine beast has appeared at the top of the Black Hawk Mountain. It is reported that the Black Hawk cult was destroyed by this fire dragon, and now the Feathermoon Pavilion has issued a collective order requesting all the experts of the sects in the Linglong Mountain to head to the Black Hawk Mountain to exterminate the fire dragon." "What? The Black Hawk cult was destroyed?" The old sect leader was shocked. Su Yun was even more astonished. He could not believe his own ears. How was it possible for such a huge sect to disappear just like that? "This is absolutely true. I didn't believe it at first, but after I heard about the gathering order from the Feathermoon Pavilion, I believed it. Sect leader, what should we do now? Do we respond to this order?" Bu Ming asked. "Of course we have to respond. The fire dragon is an ancient, vicious beast. It often causes trouble to living beings. Since we are from the Linglong Mountain, we have to protect the peace of the mountain. Bu Ming, quickly count your men. We can set off immediately," the old sect leader said. Hearing that, Bu Ming nodded and was about to leave. But just as Bu Ming left, another disciple of the Lotus Star Sword sect ran in. "Greetings, sect leader. Greetings, Protector Su." The disciple knelt down on one knee and cupped his fists. "What's the matter?" the old sect leader asked. Reporting to sect leader, "There's a young man outside who wants to see the sect leader. He said that he wants to learn sword techniques from the sect leader." The disciple said, "Learning sword techniques?" The old sect leader frowned. "Does he want to join my Lotus Star Sword sect?" Disciple once invited him to join the sword sect, but he refused. He insisted on seeing you, and disciple felt that this person's cultivation was not ordinary. "I'm afraid that he has something to report to you, so I reported it to sect leader," the man said. Hearing this, the old sect leader nodded his head. "You've done well. However, since that young man wants to see me, then let him in. Perhaps he has some ideas that he wants to discuss with me. If that's the case, I can't shut him out." "Yes, sect leader." The man cupped his fists, then turned and left. "Sect leader, I'll be going back to my room first," Su Yun said. "There's no need to be in such a hurry to leave. You can also listen from the side. Maybe it will be of some help to you," the old sect leader said. Hearing that, Su Yun thought for a while, then nodded. Very quickly, the disciple of the Lotus Star Sword sect walked in with a young man dressed in a fiery red Blade Master outfit. The man was extremely tall, skinny, and handsome. His long hair was tied into a braid, and he looked rather carefree. "Oh, are you the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect? Nice to meet you." The man walked over quickly, sized up the old sect leader, cupped his fists, and said with a smile, "My name is Xiao Huailin. I am a scholar." "Scholar?" The old sect leader was startled, then chuckled and said, "In that case, you are not here to join my Lotus Star Sword sect." "Of course not, unless you are willing to hand over your position as sect leader to me. If that's the case, I might consider joining the Lotus Star Sword sect." Xiao Huailin hugged his chest and laughed. As soon as he said that, everyone's expression changed. "Hey, what are you talking about? How can you be so rude to the sect leader?" The person who brought Xiao Huailin in immediately berated. However, the old sect leader slightly raised his hand and laughed. "It's nothing. Lord Xiao is just joking. There's no need to take it seriously." Hearing that, the man glared at Xiao Huailin fiercely and did not make a sound. However, this Xiao Huailin made Su Yun unhappy. No matter what, the old sect leader had passed down the Lotus Star sword to him and even taught him sword techniques. In his heart, he was already half a teacher, and this person was disrespectful to his own teacher. How could he be happy? Xiao Huailin laughed out loud, nodded his head, and laughed. Not bad, you the sect leader of the Lotus Star Sword sect is more sensible than the Black Hawk sect leader. Not bad, haha. Black Hawk sect leader? The old sect leader was startled. Xiao Huailin opened his mouth again. He stopped smiling, stared at the old sect leader, and said, I have not been in the Linglong Mountain for long, but not long ago I heard from someone that your Lotus Star Sword sect has two great treasures. One is a peerless sword called Lotus Star, and the other is a Lotus Star Sword art that matches with this sword. I came here today in hopes that sect leader can give me the Lotus Star Sword and teach me the Lotus Star Sword art. As an outstanding scholar, I feel that I should be able to learn the Lotus Star Sword art very quickly. All right, where's the Lotus Star Sword? Hurry up and take it out. Xiao Huailin looked left and right, his expression indifferent. However, this time, the expressions of the three people present were no longer as good as before. If the previous sentence could be treated as a joke, then this time, it was no longer a joke. Is the reason you came here for the Lotus Star Sword and its sword techniques? Suyin raised his head and stared at Xiao Huailin. Xiao Huailin turned his head and looked at Suyin, and when he saw his sword sheath, his eyes lit up. Are you also a sword user? Are you willing to spar with me? I don't want to, Suyin said directly. Are you afraid of my swordsmanship? Or do you not have confidence in yourself? Xiao Huailin said with the corner of his mouth raised. Neither. It's just that I'm injured right now and don't want to fight with you. If you want to take advantage of me, then I can't do anything about it. Suyin shrugged his shoulders. Hearing that, Xiao Huailin was startled, but quickly laughed out loud. Ha ha, you are quite interesting. Suyin did not say a word, but at that moment, he had already treated Xiao Huailin as an enemy. Xiao Huailin turned his head, looked at the old sect leader, and laughed. My purpose for coming here are these two. Quickly bring them over. If you don't, I won't give up. If you want me to give up, that's fine, as long as you defeat me. But I have to warn you, you have to fight me alone. If you want to call for help, then I will also call for help. Chapter 585. The sudden appearance of Xiao Huailin caused Su Yun's head to be filled with fog. Hearing his shameless words, it would be a lie to say that he was not angry. Especially the disciple who brought Xiao Huailin into the sect, he was furious. If not for the sect leader being here, he would have taught this arrogant brat a lesson. Sect leader, what is his cultivation level? Suyin said to the old sect leader in a low voice. Based on my initial judgment, the third grade of Sky Spirit Master can be considered an incredible existence. The old sect leader said. What does the sect leader plan to do? What else can I do other than reject it? The old sect leader shook his head, then said to Xiao Huailin, Lord Xiao, if you are willing to discuss sword techniques with me, I am naturally willing. If you want to learn our sect's sword techniques, it is not impossible. But if you want to obtain our sect's most precious Lotus Star Sword, I am afraid that it will be difficult for you to comply. Are you going to reject me? Xiao Huailin opened his eyes wide and stared at the old sect leader. Sir, it is a bit rude to ask for the truth. I cannot agree to it, the old sect leader said calmly. Unexpectedly, when he said that, Xiao Huailin's smiling face immediately turned cold. He stared fiercely at the old sect leader and shouted angrily, You actually dare to reject me, you despicable old man. I, Xiao Huailin, am known as the #1 sword in the world. For your sect to be able to use that Lotus Star Sword of yours is the fortune of your sect, and that sword to actually reject me. All right, since that's the case, then let's fight. If you don't send someone to defeat me, I won't give up. Xiao Huailin shouted, and then directly pulled out the sword from his back and stabbed it into the ground. When the sword was unsheathed, a wave of heat spread from the body of the sword. Su Yun stared at the sword, only to see that it was blood red in color, different from the immortal mystical scarlet blood sword. Its red was a type of magma red, and its temperature was abnormally high. It was probably not an ordinary item. Suddenly, Su Yun sensed that something was amiss. He saw that the place where the sword had pierced into the ground had already melted. The ground there was bright red, as though it was about to be roasted. Such a high temperature. Su Yun was secretly shocked. Since the challenge was over, Xiao Huailin stared at the old sect leader, as though he was waiting for his reply. The old sect master did not reply immediately. Instead, he lowered his head and pondered. It's not impossible for us to spar. Finally, the sect leader spoke. He looked at Xiao Huailin and said indifferently, If it's just a matter of time, can I spar with you? Hey, what do you mean by stop? That's too boring. If we want to fight, We'll fight to the death." Xiao Huailin snorted. "If I kill you, I will take away the Lotus Star Sword and its sword technique. If you kill me, this matter will be over. If that's the case, then forgive me for not being able to agree." The old sect master shook his head and refused. But at this time, Xiao Huailin seemed to be tired of the old sect leader's casual rejection. He growled, and a series of angry shouts came out of his mouth. "You old fellow, you're too unhappy. If you agree, then you agree. If you don't agree, then you don't agree. Why do you have so much nonsense to say? You don't have to fight me just because you don't want to. It's not up to you." With that said, Xiao Huailin took out the blood-red slender sword in front of him and directly slashed towards the old sect leader's head. His movements were quick and violent, without any hesitation. Seeing that, the old sect leader retreated backwards, as if he had teleported, but the opponent's sword was not only fast, it was even more ruthless. When the sword slashed down, the sword's body flickered with a red light, and a wisp of dark red sword chi flew out, striking towards the old sect leader. When he discovered the sword chi, it was already too late. The old sect leader could only raise his sword to meet the attack, but the sword in his hand was not the most ordinary sword in the Lotus Star Sword sect. It was simply unable to withstand the attack of the sword chi. The sword chi directly shattered the sword and firmly struck the old sect leader's chest. The old sect leader retreated a few steps, his body swaying uncontrollably. He started to cough violently, and his face was extremely pale. He had been injured before, and before he could recover, he was already teaching Su Yun's sword techniques, so how could he endure the sudden attack from his opponent? However, Xiao Huailin's methods had completely angered the Lotus Star Sword sect disciple, as well as Su Yun, who was at the side. Seeing that the situation was not right, the disciple shouted and immediately ran away. Su Yun, on the other hand, was not courteous at all. He immediately raised his sword and rushed forward, killing towards Xiao Huailin. Clang! The pitch-black death sword struck onto Xiao Huailin's blood-red slender sword, and the two of them held onto their swords. "What are you doing? Didn't we agree to fight one-on-one? Do you want to bully others with more people?" Xiao Huailin shouted angrily at Su Yun. "Bullying the few with more people? You're still bullying the injured? The sect leader is injured, and his strength is not as strong as before, yet you force him to fight you at this time. What face do you have to say such words to me? If you want to fight, I'll accompany you." With that, Su Yun increased his strength, attempting to force Xiao Huailin away. However, Xiao Huailin shook his head and said in disdain, "You want to fight with me? I don't want to fight with you. You said before that you're injured, and your cultivation doesn't seem to be that high. Fighting with you is too boring." With that said, Xiao Huailin's arm moved, and a terrifying force that was as strong as Mount Tai erupted from the blood-red sword. When had Su Yun ever fought against such a terrifying force? Compared to Yin Dongha's strength, it was like the difference between an ant and a giant elephant. He was caught off guard, and his body was sent flying. He retreated nearly 100 meters before stopping. So strong, Su Yun secretly clenched his teeth. Although it was only a single move, he already had a feeling. Although this person's cultivation was at the third stage of the Sky Spirit Master, his strength was definitely not, and was definitely higher than this. "Su Yun, don't act recklessly. You are not his match," the old sect leader said anxiously. He knew Xiao Huailin's methods better than Su Yun. "I understand that I'm not his match, but other than fighting him, do I have any other choice?" Su Yun said coldly. "Yes, if you hand over the Lotus Star Sword and the sword technique, wouldn't everything be fine?" Xiao Huailin snorted. "That's impossible." The old sect leader shook his head. "Lord Xiao, with your state of mind, it is not suitable for you to possess the Lotus Star Sword, and even more so, it is not suitable for you to cultivate the Lotus Star Sword art. If I were to pass these two items to you, it would only be a waste of these two treasures." "Damn it! Are you insulting me?" Xiao Huailin was furious. He immediately rushed forward again, but this time he was rushing towards the old sect leader. Seeing that, Su Yun did not hold back. He raised his sword and rushed forward. He did not hold back at all, and immediately took out the immortal mystical scarlet blood sword, Death Sword, Desolator Sword, and Tribulation Fire Sword. The three mother swords and one head sword quickly circled around Xiao Huailin, and the chaotic sword intent wrapped around him tightly like a storm. Xiao Huailin quickly waved the slender sword in his hand. His speed was so fast that even Su Yun found it hard to catch. It was many times faster than Yin Donghe. Even if Su Yun activated the Divine Wind Sword art and unleashed his maximum speed, he would not be able to keep up with his rhythm. It was not that the Divine Wind Sword art was not as fast as him, but the difference in cultivation made it difficult for him to match up to him. Is this the Imperial Sword art? Interesting, interesting. These swords are also interesting. Ha ha ha. I never thought that I would meet such an interesting person like you here. You're called Su Yun, right? I've decided I'll fight you. Xiao Huailin laughed out loud as he defended against the attacks of the four swords. The anger on his face had already disappeared, and what replaced it was excitement and agitation, as if he had discovered a treasure. This person was really temperamental. But hold on for now. Wait for the experts of the Lotus Star Sword sect to come over. Then think of a way to chase him away. This person did not attack through a challenge and had already violated the rules of the mountain. Even if his cultivation was strong and the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect were helpless against him, it was fine. If he violated the rules of the mountain, he could use this to summon the experts of the Linglong Mountain to surround and annihilate him. Su Yun thought and increased the activation of the profound qi. So thousands of flying swords flew out from the sword sheath and surrounded him like a whirlwind. In that moment, Xiao Huailin was completely submerged by the thousand swords, and his figure could no longer be seen. Seeing that, the old sect leader frowned, but he understood that there was no room for discussion now that things had come to this. He took out an order badge and activated it. A green light shot out from the center of the order badge and shot into the sky, forming a huge lotus pattern in the sky. It lasted for 4 to 5 breaths of time before disappearing. Then the old sect leader said, Su Yun, this person's strength is above Yin Donghe and is several times stronger than Yin Donghe. With the current strength of my sword sect, I am afraid it will be difficult to deal with him, but his actions have already violated the rules of the mountain. I have already informed the experts of the Linglong Mountain and asked them to rush here to capture this person. All right, Su Yun nodded, but in the next second, his qi meridian suddenly felt pain. The profound qi in his body started to stir, and before he could stabilize himself, a mouthful of blood spurted out from his throat. Su Yun retreated a few steps, holding onto his chest. At that moment, he felt a heart-wrenching pain coming from his chest. Crap! When he fought with Yin Donghe earlier, his chest was severely injured, and his injuries had not healed yet. Now that he was urging his qi like this, his old injuries had relapsed. Su Yun's heart became heavy. Before the qi could be transmitted, the flying swords also started to sway. Xiao Huailin, who was surrounded by the flying swords, immediately grabbed onto the thin sword and slashed down. Clang! The whirlwind formed by the flying swords was directly split apart, and a large number of flying swords fell to the ground. Although you are injured, I have already decided to fight you. Then I should go all out. Now, you can die and let me enjoy the glory of victory. Xiao Huailin rushed out of the whirlwind and attacked Su Yun, his face filled with a sinister and complacent smile. Seeing that, Su Yun's heart sank. He gritted his teeth and waved his hand. The Tribulation Fire Sword suddenly flew over and blocked the attack. But Xiao Huailin suddenly changed his sword stance. The sword that was supposed to be slashing towards Su Yun's head suddenly turned and pierced towards his heart. This is an illusion technique? Su Yun's heart suddenly turned cold. Xiao Huailin actually used an illusion technique to confuse him. The sword that was supposed to be slashing at him was not real. His real posture was always maintaining his thrusting motion. What a brilliant sword technique. Su Yun knew that even at his peak, he was not Xiao Huailin's match. This person was indeed not ordinary. But if he were to admit defeat like this, then he wouldn't be Su Yun. In this moment of crisis, he suddenly extended his hand and slapped towards the sword. Although he was unable to block the sword, he could at least change the trajectory of the sword and avoid any vital points. As long as he didn't die, he still had a chance. Suyin thought sinisterly. However, at this critical moment, a figure suddenly appeared from the side. Then a deep shout was heard, white lotus sky piercing. With that said, Su Yun felt rays of multicolored light flash past his eyes. Before he could even see clearly, Xiao Huailin's body was sent flying. Chapter 586. Bang! Xiao Huailin crashed into a building outside of the lotus flowers. The building immediately exploded, and the chaotic, profound qi turned the entire house into powder. Su Yun looked. It was the old sect leader. The old sect leader held onto the broken sword and stared at the ruins. A dense aura was still circling around his body. He looked at Su Yun with a heavy expression, then turned his head and said, Su Yun, your injuries are severe. Don't urge your qi anymore. If you hurt your qi channels, it will only cause your cultivation to drop. The gains will not make up for the losses. I can handle this. You should leave first. Sect leader, you might not understand me. Su Yun. Su Yun grinned. What I don't like the most is for others to say what you just said to me. This will only make me even more unwilling to leave. When the old sect master heard this, he sighed. Why are you so stubborn? Perhaps to you, this is stubbornness, but to me, this is principle. So forget it. The old sect master no longer tried to persuade him. At this moment, a figure rushed out of the ruins, straight into the clouds, and floated in the sky. Su Yun and the old sect leader looked over. It was Xiao Huailin. Xiao Huailin was glaring at the two of them. His face was distorted beyond recognition. He stared at Su Yun and the old sect leader with extreme anger and roared ruthlessly. I am dueling with Su Yun. Why are you interfering? Are you going to help Su Yun? Are you trying to bully me with numbers? Xiao Huailin, I originally had no intention of becoming enemies with you. But since you were so overbearing, I have no choice but to offend you. The old sect leader said in a deep voice. At this time, it was useless to be polite. All right, good, all right. Xiao Huailin was so angry that he gasped for breath and said angrily, You guys have more people to bully me. It's not fair to win. I, Xiao Huailin, have already won this battle, but do you think I will give up just like that? Since it's 2 against 1, I'll call for help too. We'll fight 2 against 2. Is that fair? With that, Xiao Huailin immediately extended his hand, touched his waist, and injected a thread of profound energy into the belt on his waist in an instant. Roar! A roar that shook the heavens resounded. Su Yun and the old sect leader's face changed. After the flame left the belt, it crazily expanded, and in the blink of an eye, it was already the size of a small mountain. After the flame faded, a majestic fire dragon appeared beside Xiao Huailin. The fire dragon coiled in the air. A pair of copper bell-like eyes stared fiercely at Su Yun and the old sect leader. Is this a fire dragon? The old sect master was stunned. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and cried out in shock. Could it be that you are the one who destroyed the Black Hawk cult? Destroy the Black Hawk cult. Su Yun's heart sank. Only then did he remember the news that Bu Ming had reported about the Black Hawk cult. Wasn't the Black Hawk cult destroyed by a fire dragon? Could it be? This was all done by Xiao Huailin. The people of the Black Hawk cult bullied me with their numbers, so I had no choice but to teach them a lesson. Right now, their souls are all in my brother's stomach. Do you want to see the people of the Black Hawk cult? Don't worry, I'll send you to them right away. With that, Xiao Huailin waved his hand. The gigantic fire dragon roared angrily and rushed towards the two of them. As it approached the two of them, the fire dragon opened its mouth wide. Its blazing mouth was like a black hole filled with magma. Su Yun wanted to retaliate, but just as he was about to activate the profound qi, a heart-wrenching pain came from his chest once again. It seemed that his injuries were not light. Su Yun clenched his teeth and thought. The old sect leader held onto the broken sword with one hand and directly thrusted it towards the fire dragon's mouth. A wave of profound qi that was as bright as jade floated on the broken sword and quickly transformed into a gigantic lotus pattern. It was extremely dazzling. King Kong. The old sect leader bellowed. The lotus immediately turned golden. As the fire dragon rushed over, it was as if it had crashed into a steel plate. With a dong sound, its body stopped, unable to advance any further. This was the power of the Lotus Star Sword art. At this moment, the lotus pattern was as sturdy as a diamond. But in the next second, a shadow suddenly rushed towards the old sect leader. Su Yin looked over, and his eyes immediately turned red. This person was Xiao Huailin. It's not fighting alone. The corner of Xiao Huailin's mouth revealed a cold smile. His sword fiercely slashed towards the old sect leader's head. Only the heavens knew how fast it was. The old sect leader's cultivation was not ordinary, but he was injured. Although he had reacted, his body's reaction speed was much slower. He only saw his body move to the side, preparing to dodge, but his left arm did not have time to move and was directly cut off by the sword. The old sect leader let out a muffled groan and fell from the sky. The golden lotus that was blocking the fire dragon also loosened. The old sect leader endured the pain and stood up. He looked at his severed left arm, only to discover that the wound was actually emitting flames. This sword, it actually has such power. The old sect leader said in a deep voice, "It's not over yet." Xiao Huailin did not hold back at all. He rushed forward once again, and the fire dragon in the sky also broke through the golden lotus, cooperating with Xiao Huailin to smash towards the old sect leader. From the looks of it, it was going to kill the old sect leader. Do you think he's fighting alone? Suddenly, an angry shout rang out from the side. Several explosions rang out that pierced through the sky. The sky darkened, and a large amount of pitch-black clouds gathered together, forming a vortex. Following that, several bolts of lightning struck out, smashing straight beside the old sect leader. Dong, 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 dong. The ground started to tremble crazily, and a large amount of dust flew up, completely engulfing the old sect leader's body. The dense and hazy dust filled the entire lotus flower field. A fierce aura instantly swept out in all directions like a wave. Xiao Huailin's heart turned cold. He felt that something was wrong. He immediately stopped and did not dare to rush forward again. However, the fire dragon did not retreat. It continued to sweep away everything in its path and fiercely charged towards the old sect leader. Roar! A furious roar mixed with an unquenchable anger suddenly came out from the thick dust. Everyone felt as if their eardrums were about to burst. The ground suddenly started to shake violently like a small boat in a storm. Several incomparably huge figures rushed out from the dust, all of them like wolves and tigers as they charged towards the fire dragon, one after another huge palms facing the fire dragon. A might that was as heavy as a mountain spread throughout the entire Lotus Star Sword Sect Dong. The fire dragon's head was directly smashed by a huge iron fist, causing its entire body to sway. Before it could retaliate, a few other palms grabbed onto its slender and strong body, causing it to fall to the ground. Bang dong! The huge and blazing fire dragon fiercely fell to the ground. The ground immediately turned red, and countless houses were set ablaze. It struggled with all its might, but at this moment there were 7 incomparably huge giants with astonishing strength surrounding it. The sudden terror caught this primordial vicious beast off guard. What is this? Xiao Huailin was startled. Looking at the 7 giants that suddenly appeared, he himself did not manage to react. The old sect leader was even more surprised. He knew that this was definitely Su Yun's method. What a strong devil chi. These 7 giants are probably puppet equipment as created by the true devil realm. However, the strength of each of these giants is above Su Yun's. How can Su Yun control such a powerful puppet equipment? And activating 7 of them at the same time? How'd he do it? The old sect leader was stunned. He turned his head to look at Su Yun, but with just a glance, he was stunned. At the moment, Su Yun was already holding onto the sword with one hand, the sword tip pointing downwards, supporting his tottering body, while the other hand was activating the incantation, channeling chi. His face became even paler, beads of perspiration continuously dripping down. It was obvious that activating these 7 powerful giants had consumed the last of his profound strength. So this is the helper you summoned? There are quite a few of them. Xiao Huailin noticed Su Yun's side. and seeing his appearance, he immediately understood and sneered. Hearing that, Su Yun clenched his teeth and did not make a sound. Although the giant's aura was strong, Su Yun did not have much profound strength at the moment and was unable to unleash their full strength. With his current injured body, being able to unleash 20 to 30% of the giant's strength was already incredible. Do you think my helper is some trash cat or dog? With just a few skeletons, you want to defeat my helper? You're too naive. Xiao Huailin sneered again and again. He extended his hand and snapped his fingers. It was unknown what spell or signal it was, but the fire dragon that was being suppressed by the 7 devil-bone giants immediately let out an angry roar. The raging flames on its body immediately expanded by a circle. Following that, its huge body swung out, directly knocking away the surrounding devil-bone giantess. Its entire body soared into the sky, dancing in the air. The dragon flew to the 9 heavens. It circled a few times, looked down at the devil-bone giant, opened its mouth and spat out a large amount of flames. The devil-bone giant was baptized by the flames and let out angry roars. They leaped out of the sea of fire and grabbed onto the fire dragon to attack. But the fire dragon's body was incomparably hard, and their iron fists were completely useless against it. Even if the iron fists that were like a torrential storm landed on its body, it would be like a drizzle, not itching at all. Ha ha! Seeing that, Xiao Huailin laughed complacently. The unwillingness in Su Yun's eyes grew stronger. But at this moment, he was already gasping for breath. His eyelids were getting heavier and heavier, and he felt that his consciousness was getting weaker and weaker. He had already reached his limit. Forcefully activating such a move was simply too harsh for him. If he continued to activate it, it would indeed be, as the old sect leader had said, the Chi Meridian would be damaged and his cultivation would drop. Was it going to end like this? Su Yun spat out a mouthful of turbid air, his heart filled with unwillingness. However, at this moment, a palm suddenly struck his back. The palm did not have much power, but when the palm came close to his back, a large amount of profound strength surged into his body like a tide. Su Yun was startled. He turned his head to look, only to see that the owner of the palm was the old sect leader. Chapter 587. The surging, profound strength surged from his palm into his body. It was a type of extremely pure, profound strength. It did not belong to the 5 main attributes of profound strength. It was more like a type of unorthodox profound strength. It was similar to spirit life chi, but its vitality was stronger than spirit life chi. When the spirit chi entered his body, Su Yun felt his dried-up body quickly swell up. His consciousness returned to normal, and he slowly became spirited. Su Yun, quickly stop. Your injuries are already very serious. If you continue to activate it, your cultivation will definitely drop greatly. The old sect leader behind him urged the profound chi as he spoke in a low voice. But sect leader, if we don't fight with our lives on the line, do you think that person will let us go? Even the Black Hawk sect was destroyed by him. Would he still show mercy to us? Su Yun secretly clenched his teeth. You should go first. I will hold him back here. As long as you hold on for a while longer, when the experts of the Linglong Mountain arrive, you can join hands and surround him. Do not fight him head-on. If not, it will only increase the number of casualties. This person's cultivation is probably even higher than mine. The old sect leader said in a deep voice. Circle. I also wish to circle around, but can I circle around now? Su Yun shook his head and sighed. However, since the old sect leader had already said so, it was not good for him to persist. But at this time, Xiao Huailin had already rushed over. He stared at Su Yun. The slender blood-red sword extended out like a venomous snake, causing the air to tremble violently. The sword force was astonishing. The sword edge seemed to contain thousands of troops and horses. It was valiant and spirited. Even if it was just a glance, it would not make one have the slightest thought of resisting. Seeing that, the old sect leader immediately let go of his sword and activated the Lotus Star sword art to block it. He only had one hand left, so it was impossible for him to continue channeling chi to Su Yun. But Su Yun already understood the old sect leader's intentions. He had a lot of energy in his body. Su Yun gathered his chi, pulled out the death sword, and released the power of the death sword. The power inside the death sword surged out like a raging river, and his body was once again filled with energy. The old sect leader blocked Xiao Huailin, while Su Yun continued to urge the 7 giants to restrain the fire dragon. At the moment, Su Yun was no longer as crazy as before. He only allowed the 7 giants to defend against the fire dragon's attack. Although they had split up, regardless of whether it was the old sect leader or Su Yun, they both felt that it was extremely strenuous. The fire dragon's strength was probably an entire grade higher than the giants. Unless Su Yun was at his peak, controlling the giants' movements, he might still be able to fight against a fire dragon. But now, he could only be completely suppressed by the other party. The fire dragon spat out flames that ignited half of the Lotus Star Sword sect. The flames soared into the sky, as if it was the end of the world. Sect Master. At this time, chaotic shouts came from outside the lotus flowers, and a large number of figures rushed over, with Bu Ming in the lead. The experts of the Lotus Star Sword sect had arrived. That's the one. That's the one who tried to kill the sect leader. Everyone, let's capture him together. The disciple who had led Xiao Huailin into the sect pointed at Xiao Huailin, who was fighting with the old sect leader, and shouted. When the group of people heard this, their anger soared to the heavens, and they all rushed forward. Seeing this, the old sect leader's expression changed drastically. He anxiously shouted, "What are you guys doing? Quickly leave. All those below the 3rd grade of Sky Spirit Master, leave the Lotus Star Sword sect, quickly." However, the old sect leader's words did not have much effect this time. Sect leader, how can we be afraid again? Previously, when we were dealing with the Blackhawk sect, we could only be spectators. Today, this person is provoking our Lotus Star Sword sect. As members of the sect, how can we escape just like that? Bu Ming shouted. Many of the people present saw the fire dragon soaring in the sky and fighting with the giant. In fact, they already knew who this person was, but they were not afraid. If they were to be afraid now, how would they survive in the future? Sometimes, fear was a sign of certain death. Perhaps it was not the body that died, but the soul. There were purple lightning, sharp sword chi, and many pure white lotus flowers. The profound skill was like rain, crashing towards Xiao Huailin. Xiao Huailin, who was in the middle of a fierce battle with the old sect leader, was caught off guard and was directly struck by the profound skill. He was immediately beaten until his face was covered in dirt and fell down from the sky. He anxiously crawled up and looked at the people who had suddenly rushed out. He was immediately flustered and exasperated. You actually called so many people to deal with me. Cunning, too cunning. You're no different from the Blackhawk sect. Since that's the case, you will have to bear the wrath of my world's #1 sword. Xiao Huailin roared. The fiery red blade master clothed immediately released a ball of scorching flames. His entire body seemed to be engulfed by the fire. What big words you have there. The people of the Lotus Star Sword sect were unconvinced and continued to attack. When the profound skill from all directions collided with him again, all of them entered the flames released by Xiao Huailin's clothes and disappeared. What? Everyone was shocked. Imperial equipment. Seeing that, the old sect leader's face changed. To be able to absorb so many attacks and remain safe, the grade of this Imperial equipment was definitely not low. With the help of the primordial vicious beasts and the protection of the Imperial equipment, his own cultivation was also incomparably strong. Compared to the spirit cultivator of the Linglong Mountain, this kind of person could already be considered a supreme expert. Who the hell was this person? The old sect leader thought to himself. Whiz. Suddenly, Xiao Huailin instantly landed in front of the old sect leader, and with a slash, the sword body actually split into several sword images and swallowed them whole. As the sword shadow approached the old sect leader, it spat out a 10-meter-long tongue of fire. The old sect leader did not have time to defend, and his chest was pierced by the tongue of fire, causing him to fall from the sky. Sect leader, Bu Ming shouted. He rushed forward and rushed towards Xiao Huailin. The corner of Xiao Huailin's mouth raised into a disdainful smile. He ignored the profound skill that was rushing towards him. and slashed towards Bu Ming. Clang! Bu Ming's sword that was smashed into two halves. The flames on the sword landed on his body, instantly igniting it. Ah! Bu Ming screamed miserably. He retreated a few steps. He activated the profound qi to extinguish the fire, but his own profound qi surged out of his body to resist the flames, like an ant trying to shake a tree. There was no effect at all. Bu Ming screamed miserably. Until the last bit of profound qi was used up, he was still unable to extinguish the flames, and in the end he turned into ashes in the flames, dying miserably, not even leaving his soul behind. Protector Bu, the people of the Lotus Star Sword sect, roared miserably. "You bastard, I'm going to kill you." Some of the experts from the sects who were on good terms with Bu Ming were furious, and all of them rushed forward. But facing Xiao Huailin, these people could not hold on for more than a few rounds, and were killed by him. Come on, come on. Do you think I will be afraid of your numbers?" Xiao Huailin twisted his body as he waved the sword in his hand. The sword was like a spirit, leaping into the crowd, and waves of afterimages flickered in the crowd. It was extremely miraculous. These so-called experts of the Lotus Star Sword sect could not do anything about it. The stronger ones could still touch Xiao Huailin, but their attacks were all blocked by the Imperial equipment robe, and the weaker ones could not even touch the edge. Every few breaths of time, a person from the Lotus Star Sword sect would fall under Xiao Huailin's sword. His sword was extremely hot, and every time it struck a person, the terrifying temperature on the sword would burn the blood in the person's body. Those with higher cultivation could still use the profound qi to resist, but those with lower cultivation, even if they were to face a small injury, would immediately turn into a dried-up corpse. Seeing his disciples fall one by one, the old sect leader's expression became more and more serious. He coughed violently a few times. Enduring his injuries, he raised the broken sword and rushed forward, releasing all of his qi, and directly knocked away the disciples who were fighting around Xiao Huailin. Some of the disciples who were about to be killed by Xiao Huailin were scattered by the old sect leader's qi and saved their lives. "Your opponent is me," the old sect leader bellowed. The broken sword in his hand pulled out a pure white lotus and rushed forward. When the lotus appeared, it immediately began to bloom. A vigorous life force and a mysterious concept wrapped around Xiao Huailin and started to frantically devour his profound strength. But Xiao Huailin was not an ordinary person. He suddenly took a step forward and thrusted his sword towards the ground. Soaring flames. Crash! A pillar of fire spewed out from under Xiao Huailin's feet. The pillar of fire appeared and burned the lotus into a golden light. The sect leader was sent flying. He spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood in the air, and when he fell to the ground, he was already breathing more than he was breathing. Sect leader, Su Yun's eyes turned red. The devil qi overflowed. He roared and rushed forward. "The current you can't even block a single finger of mine. How can you be my opponent? This sect only has this much strength. Why is it able to possess a treasure like the Lotus Star Sword? What a pity, what a pity. Leave it to me, and let me bring this sword to greater heights." Looking at the dying old sect leader, Xiao Huailin shook his head with a helpless look. "Bullshit." Su Yun was furious. He took out the Lotus Star Sword from the sword sheath and stabbed it in the ground, roaring, "This is the Lotus Star Sword. If you have the ability, come and take it." "Su Yun, don't be rash. Leave quickly. Leave his place. This person is able to destroy the Black Hawk sect by himself. His strength is probably extremely terrifying. You guys are definitely not his match." The old sect leader grabbed onto the clothes on Su Yun's chest and shouted weakly, "Sect leader, can't you see it clearly? He has already decided to destroy the Lotus Star Sword sect. Do you think there's any use for us to leave now?" Su Yun clenched his teeth, his eyes bloodshot. "Ha ha ha, that's right. All of you are bullying me with so many people. Beating me up is too despicable. In order to punish all of you for being despicable, you will all become my brother's food. It likes to devour souls. So none of you can even think of leaving today?" Xiao Huailin laughed sinisterly. He stared at the crowd and said sinisterly, "How can you be so vicious? The old sect leader's eyes widened as he said with all his might, "You guys are shameless first." Xiao Huailin snorted. He was no longer courteous and continued to rush towards the crowd, raising his sword to kill. Killing people was like harvesting wheat. The people of the Lotus Star Sword sect could not stop him at all. Seeing that, Su Yun held onto the Lotus Star sword tightly, clenched his teeth, and finally made a decision. He put down the old sect leader and planned to rush over to fight with Xiao Huailin. But in the next second, the old sect leader grabbed onto Su Yun's arm. "Wait a minute, Su Yun, if you go over like this, you will only lose your life. You will definitely not be able to win against Xiao Huailin." The old sect leader said weakly and anxiously, "I have a way to let you defeat him. Just do as I say, okay? Don't be reckless." "Sect leader, you have a way?" Hearing that, Su Yun anxiously stopped and asked, "Sect leader, what method is it? Quickly tell me." That you're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.